When the War King fell asleep on her shoulder, the entire court froze in shock. Rowan Vale never thought she'd touch power. She was just an herbalist summoned to treat a councilman's fever. But when King Leander Virex, the sleepless war machine everyone feared, collapsed against her shoulder in the middle of a war briefing, everything changed. Warriors who'd faced death without flinching stared in stunned silence. In that forbidden moment, Rowan felt something deeper than terror. By nightfall, she was summoned to his private chambers, and her ordinary life shattered forever. Stay until the end to see how a nobody healer became the only person who could save a king from his own nightmares. Like and comment what city you're watching from. The council chamber reeked of old blood and older pride. Rowan kept her head down, fingers gripping the worn leather of her medicine bag like it was the only real thing in the room. She didn't belong here. Every instinct screamed it. The stone walls were too high, the men too hard, their voices too sharp with the kind of authority that came from deciding who lived and who burned. She'd been summoned to treat Councilman Wraith's persistent cough, nothing more. A simple task for a simple woman. Get in, mix the remedy, get out. Don't look anyone in the eye, especially not him. King Leander Virex sat at the head of the table like a blade waiting to drop. Rowan had heard the stories everyone had. The sleepless king. The man who hadn't closed his eyes in over a year, who commanded armies at midnight and signed death warrants at dawn, whose gaze could peel the lies off a man's tongue. They said he was more weapon than human now. That whatever made him soft had been carved out in the war. She believed it. He looked like winter itself had hollowed him out and filled the space with something colder. Sharp jaw, sharper eyes, gray as storm clouds, ringed with shadows so deep they looked like bruises. His hands rested on the table, motionless, but Rowan could see the tension in them. Controlled violence. Everything about him was control, except for the exhaustion that clung to him like a second skin. The eastern border is compromised, General Thorne was saying, jabbing a thick finger at the map spread between them. We need 3 battalions moved by week's end, or we're looking at a slaughter. We don't have 3 battalions to spare. That was Commander Vess, her voice like gravel. Pull from the east and the northern territories will revolt. They're already talking sedition. Let them talk. Thorne's face went red. Better than letting Kyle's forces butcher our people like livestock. Rowan focused on grinding the elecampane root in her mortar, the rhythmic scrape of stone on stone, a small mercy against the rising voices. Councilman Wraith sat to her left, wheezing quietly, waiting for her to finish the preparation. She could feel eyes on her. Servants didn't usually sit at the war table, even in the corner. But Wraith had insisted, his lungs too weak to wait in another room. Your Majesty, Thorne's voice climbed higher. With respect, we cannot afford hesitation. Not now. Not after what happened at... Do not. The king's voice cut through the room like a knife through silk, quiet, deadly. Do not speak of Blackwater in this chamber. The temperature dropped. Rowan's hands stilled. She'd heard whispers about Blackwater, a village, a massacre, the thing that broke the king, though no one dared say it to his face. Thorne's jaw worked, but no sound came out. Around the table, hardened warriors suddenly found the map fascinating. The silence stretched, taut as a bowstring. That's when Rowan felt it. A shift in the air, a weight pressing down like the moment before lightning strikes. She looked up, she shouldn't have, but she did, and saw the king's face go slack. Just for a second. Just long enough for something human to flicker behind those storm-gray eyes. Something broken and desperate and drowning. His head tilted. And then Leander Virex, the man who never slept, the warrior who'd fought for 36 hours straight without faltering, the king who held an empire together through sheer will, fell asleep. Against her shoulder. The world stopped. Rowan froze, mortar and pestle locked in her hands, barely breathing as the weight of the king's head settled against her collarbone. She could feel the heat of him through her simple dress, could hear the change in his breathing, deep, even, real sleep. Not the half-conscious drift of exhaustion, actual rest. Across the table, General Thorne's mouth hung open. Commander Vess had half risen from her chair, hand on her sword hilt, face white as snow. Councilman Wraith stared like he'd witnessed a miracle. No one moved, no one spoke. Because the sleepless king was sleeping, and he was doing it on a nobody herbalist from the lower districts. Rowan's heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. Every muscle screamed at her to move, to wake him, to apologize. But terror nailed her in place. What did you do when a king fell asleep on you? Was there protocol? Would they execute her for this? What? Vess started, barely a whisper. Thorn held up a hand, his face cycling through shock, confusion, and something that might have been wonder. The king slept on. Rowan could count his breaths. 1, 2, 3. Deep and steady, his chest rising and falling against her arm. His face had changed too. The harsh lines softened, the permanent crease between his brows easing. He looked younger like this. Human. Breakable. Don't move. Wraith's voice was so low Rowan almost didn't hear it. For the love of all that's holy, girl, don't you dare move. Like she could. Like her body would even obey if she tried. Minutes crawled past. The counselors watched in silence, warriors struck dumb by something they couldn't fight or strategize against. Some stood, some sat. All of them stared at the impossible sight of their sleepless king finally at rest. It was Vess who finally broke the spell. How long? She asked, directing the question at Wrath. I don't know. The old councilman's hands trembled. The physician said he hasn't truly slept since Blackwater. 14 months. Not once. That's not possible, Thorn muttered. A man can't look at him and tell me it's not true. They looked. They saw. The king slept, and the kingdom held its breath. Rowan's arms started to go numb. She didn't dare adjust her position. Sweat beaded at her temples. The medicine bag lay forgotten at her feet, the half-ground root abandoned in the mortar. None of it mattered. Nothing mattered except the weight against her shoulder and the terrible, wonderful fact that somehow, impossibly, she'd done what the finest physicians and most powerful healers in the realm could not. She'd given the king peace. We need to wake him, someone whispered. No. Vess's hand left her sword. Let him rest. God knows he's earned it. More minutes. The light through the high windows shifted. Rowan's legs cramped. She bit her lip and endured it, afraid even the smallest movement would shatter whatever fragile magic had taken hold. Then the king stirred. His breathing changed first, quickening, the deep sleep giving way to something lighter. Rowan felt him tense, felt awareness return to his body like water filling a vessel. Leander's eyes opened. For a heartbeat, he didn't move, just stared straight ahead, processing. Then his gaze dropped to where his head rested against her shoulder. He jerked upright like he'd been burned. Your Majesty, Vess started. Leander held up a hand, silencing her. His face had gone carefully blank, but Rowan saw the confusion flicker behind his eyes. The fear. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time, and she felt the full weight of that storm-gray stare. Who are you? His voice came out rough, like he hadn't used it in days. Rowan's tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth. She managed to unstick it. Rowan Vale, Your Majesty. I'm an herbalist. I was treating Councilman Wraith. How long was I? He couldn't seem to finish the question. 20 minutes, Thorn said quietly. Maybe more. Something passed over the king's face. Not quite relief, not quite horror. Something in between that made Rowan's chest ache. Leander stood abruptly, his chair scraping against stone. Every eye in the room tracked him as he moved to the window, putting distance between himself and the council table, between himself and her. Continue the briefing, he said to the glass. No one continued anything. Vess cleared her throat. Your Majesty, perhaps we should... I said continue. The words came out harder. A command, not a request. Thorn exchanged a glance with Vess. Then, slowly, uncertainly, they returned to the map. The conversation resumed, stilted and strange, everyone dancing around what they'd just witnessed. Rowan gathered her things with shaking hands. The elecampane root scattered across the table as she tried to scoop it back into the mortar. Wraith helped her, his old fingers steadier than hers. Go, he whispered, before they remember you're here. She didn't need to be told twice. Rowan fled the council chamber, her medicine bag clutched to her chest, pulse thundering in her ears. The corridor outside felt too bright, too real after the oppressive weight of that room. She walked fast, not quite running, desperate to put distance between herself and the terrible intimacy of what had just happened. A king had fallen asleep on her shoulder. Warriors had watched in silence. And now she just wanted to disappear back into her ordinary life, and pretend none of it had ever occurred. She made it 3 corridors before the guards found her. They didn't grab her, didn't need to. The 2 men simply appeared at her elbows, faces professionally blank, and one of them said, "Miss Vale, you're to come with us." Rowan's stomach dropped. "I didn't do anything wrong. I was just—" "No one said you did anything wrong." The guard's tone gave nothing away. "You're summoned, that's all." "Summoned where?" "You'll see." They walked her through passages she'd never seen before, past tapestries worth more than her entire district, under ceilings painted with battles and saints. Servants pressed themselves against walls as they passed. Rowan caught whispers in their wake. "That's her. The one who—" "Impossible." Her face burned. News traveled fast in a palace. Too fast. The guards stopped at a set of double doors carved with wolves and winter roses. One of them knocked, 2 sharp raps, then pushed the door open without waiting for an answer. Inside. Rowan stepped through and the doors closed behind her with a final sounding thud. She was in a study. Books lined the walls floor to ceiling, and maps covered every available surface. A fire crackled in the hearth despite the warm evening, and standing with his back to her, staring into the flames like they held answers, was the king. "Your Majesty." Rowan dropped into an awkward curtsy. "I'm sorry if I—" "Don't apologize." Leander's voice was flat. He didn't turn around. "You did nothing wrong." Silence stretched between them. Rowan shifted her weight, unsure if she should speak or stay quiet or run screaming from the room. 14 months, the king said finally. 14 months since I've slept more than minutes at a time. Do you understand what that does to a person? I can't imagine, Your Majesty. No, you can't. He turned then, and the firelight caught the exhaustion carved into his face. Up close, it was worse. The shadows under his eyes looked like bruises. His skin stretched too tight over his bones. He looked like a man being eaten alive from the inside. The physicians tried everything. Potions, tonics, meditation, prayer. Nothing worked. And then you walk into my council chamber and I fall asleep on your shoulder like a child. Rowan didn't know what to say to that. Leander crossed the room, stopping a few feet away. Close enough that she could see the gray in his eyes wasn't uniform. There were flecks of silver, like ice catching light. Close enough to be improper. "I need to know if it was coincidence," he said quietly, "or if it was you. I don't understand. Tomorrow night. Come to my chambers at midnight. Sit beside my bed. Let's see if it happens again." Rowan's eyes went wide. "Your Majesty, I can't. That's not. People will think—" "I don't care what people think." His voice cut through her protests like a blade. "I care about sleep, real sleep, the kind that doesn't leave me half mad in hearing voices. If you can give me that, I'll give you anything you want. Gold, status, protection, name it." "I'm just an herbalist," Rowan whispered. "I don't have magic. I can't—" "You did something in that chamber, something no one else has managed." Leander's hand came up, hovering near her arm but not quite touching. "Please." The word cracked. Just a little. Just enough to show the man beneath the crown. Rowan looked at him, really looked, and saw desperation there, raw and real and terrifying. This wasn't a king commanding. This was a drowning man reaching for anything that might keep him afloat. "One night," she heard herself say. "I'll try. But if it doesn't work, if it doesn't work, you go home and we never speak of this again." His shoulders dropped half an inch. Relief, maybe, or just exhaustion letting go for a second. "Midnight. The guards will bring you." He stepped back, putting proper distance between them again. The king returning, the desperate man retreating. "You're dismissed." Rowan curtsied again, turned toward the door, then hesitated. "Your Majesty?" "What?" "What happened at Blackwater?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Leander's face went hard as stone, and for a second Rowan thought she'd crossed a line that would get her thrown in a cell. But then he spoke, and his voice was dead, empty. "I failed. People died. And now I can't stop seeing their faces every time I close my eyes. That's what happened at Blackwater. He turned back to the fire, shoulders rigid, conversation over. Rowan left before she could make it worse. Gawk. Midnight came too fast. Rowan stood outside the king's chambers, stomach in knots, while the guards knocked and announced her. She'd changed into her cleanest dress, not that it mattered, it was still obviously common cloth, and braided her hair, like that would somehow make this less insane. A king had asked her to sleep near him, to help him sleep. If anyone found out, her reputation would be destroyed. Not that she had much of one to begin with. The herbalist from the lower districts wasn't exactly high society. The door opened. Leander stood there in shirt sleeves and trousers, looking more human and somehow more dangerous without all the armor and ceremony. His hair was damp, like he'd washed recently. The shadows under his eyes hadn't improved. "Come in." Rowan stepped inside and the door closed behind her with that same final thud. The king's chambers were sparse. She'd expected opulence, but instead found simple furniture, a large bed that looked barely used, and more books, maps on the walls, a desk covered in reports. It looked like a place someone worked, not lived. "I don't know how this is supposed to work," Leander said, gesturing vaguely at the bed. "Do you need to touch me? Or just be near?" "I don't know either, Your Majesty. I didn't do anything intentional before." "Stop calling me that. Not here." He rubbed his face with both hands. "Here, I'm just tired. Call me Leander." That felt impossibly intimate. "I don't think—" "Please." The Your Majesty makes this feel even more ridiculous than it already is. Fair point. Rowan approached the bed like it might bite her. "Maybe I should just sit in the chair beside it? That seems safer." "Safer for who?" "For both our reputations." Something that might have been a laugh escaped him. Dry. Humorless. "My reputation is built on blood and insomnia. Yours is about to be built on sleeping next to a king. We're past safe." He had a point there, too. Leander sat on the edge of the bed, then lay back against the pillows with visible reluctance, like he knew what was coming. Knew sleep wouldn't take him, and he'd spend another night staring at the ceiling while his mind ate itself alive. Rowan pulled the chair closer and sat, hands folded in her lap. They stayed like that for long minutes, awkward, silent. "This isn't going to work," Leander said finally. "You're too far away." "How close do you need me to be?" "I don't know. In the council chamber I was—" He trailed off, jaw tight. "You were leaning against me," Rowan finished quietly. "Yes." She stood, heart hammering, and lowered herself to sit on the edge of the bed, not lying down, not improper, just closer. "Is this closer?" Rowan shifted and his hand caught her wrist. Not hard, just contact, skin on skin. His fingers were warm, rough with old calluses. "Stay," he said. Not a command, a request. So she stayed. Minutes passed. Rowan focused on breathing, on the warmth of his hand around her wrist, on trying not to think about how inappropriate this was. Leander's breathing didn't change. His eyes stayed open, staring at nothing. "It's not working," he muttered. "Maybe if you closed your eyes—" "I can't." The words came out strangled. "Every time I do, I see them. The dead. The ones I couldn't save." Rowan looked down at him, at this king who commanded armies but couldn't command his own mind to rest, and something shifted in her chest. Pity, maybe, or recognition. She knew what it was like to carry guilt. "Tell me about them," she said softly. His eyes snapped to hers. "What?" "The people at Blackwater. Tell me who they were." "Why would I—" "'Cause maybe if you say it out loud, it won't have as much power when you close your eyes." Leander stared at her like she'd suggested he cut off his own arm. But then, slowly, he started talking. "There was a woman. Mara. She had 3 children. I saw them in the square when we arrived. The youngest couldn't have been more than 5. She was selling bread." His voice went distant, like he was watching it happen again. "When Kael's forces attacked, I was on the other side of the village. By the time we fought through, the square was burning. I found her body in the rubble. The children were gone." Rowan's throat tightened. There was an old man who tried to defend his home with a kitchen knife, a boy who ran the wrong direction and got caught in the crossfire, a couple who died holding each other. His hand tightened on her wrist. I see all of them, every night, every time I close my eyes. And I know it was war. I know we saved more than we lost, but you still failed them, Rowan whispered. Yes. And you think you don't deserve rest because of it. Leander's jaw worked. He didn't answer, but he didn't have to. The truth was written all over his face. Rowan did something stupid then, something bold. She lay down beside him, on top of the covers, maintaining that last shred of propriety, and rested her head near his shoulder. What are you doing? His voice came out rough. Giving you permission to sleep. You've carried this long enough. Let it go, just for tonight. I can't. Yes, you can. She could feel his heart hammering through the mattress. Those people are dead, Leander. You surviving won't bring them back, and you destroying yourself won't honor them. It just means Kyle wins twice. His breathing hitched. Rowan waited, her own pulse loud in her ears. This was insane. She was lying next to a king, talking about war and death and guilt like she had any right to these words. But then she felt it, the change. Leander's breathing began to slow. Deep, even. His hand loosened on her wrist, fingers going slack. The terrible tension in his body eased degree by degree. He was falling asleep. Rowan held perfectly still, afraid to break whatever spell had taken hold. She could hear him now, soft, steady breaths. Real sleep, the kind that healed. Minutes turned to hours. The fire burned low, and Leander Virex slept. Rowan woke to gray dawn light and the realization that she'd fallen asleep too. Panic jolted through her. She was still in the king's bed, still lying beside him, his arm now draped across her waist like she belonged there. Heat flooded her face. If anyone saw... Leander stirred, and she froze. His eyes opened slowly, confusion flickering across his face. Then awareness. Then something that looked like wonder. I slept, he said, voice rough with disuse. I actually slept. You did? Rowan tried to extract herself without making it more awkward than it already was. His arm tightened, holding her in place. How long? I don't know. Hours. It's almost dawn. Hours. He said it like a prayer, like a miracle. I haven't slept hours in... He stopped, shook his head. Thank you. I didn't do anything. You did everything. His gray eyes met hers, and the intensity there made her breath catch. I need you to come back tonight, and every night after until we figure out what this is. People will talk, Rowan whispered. Let them talk. I don't care. His hand came up, fingers brushing her cheek with a gentleness that didn't match the hardness of his reputation. I need this. I need you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Rowan should have said no, should have run back to her ordinary life in her simple shop and forgotten this ever happened. But when she looked at him, at this broken king who finally found peace, she couldn't. Every night, she heard herself agree. Relief crashed over his face like a wave. Outside the door, voices rose. Morning court would start soon, reality pressing back in. Leander released her, sitting up and running a hand through his hair. Already the king was returning, the vulnerable man retreating behind walls of duty and command. The guards will escort you out through the servants' passage. Less chance of being seen. He stood, moved toward his wardrobe. Return at midnight. We'll make this work. Rowan gathered herself, straightened her dress, tried to look like she hadn't just spent the night in the king's bed. At the door, she paused. Leander? He turned, surprise flickering across his face at the use of his name. What if this doesn't work every time? What if it was just... Then we'll deal with it. But right now, I have hope for the first time in 14 months. Don't take that away. She nodded and slipped through the door the guards opened for her. The walk back through the palace felt like a dream or a nightmare. Servants stared, guards whispered. By the time Rowan reached the street, she knew the rumors had already started spreading like wildfire. The herbalist and the sleepless king. What had she done? The next night, Leander slept for 6 hours. The night after that, 7. Within a week, it became routine. Rowan would arrive at midnight, slip into the king's chambers, and lie beside him while he finally found rest. They didn't talk much during those hours, just existed in the same space, her presence somehow enough to quiet whatever demons hunted him. But the court was another matter entirely. "It's unnatural," Rowan heard one of the healers hiss in the corridor. "No herb, no magic, just a common girl from the slums making the king sleep. It's witchcraft." "Or seduction," another voice added, sharp with disdain. "We all know what really happens in those chambers." Rowan kept her head down and kept walking, but the words followed her like knives. In the council chambers, the whispers were worse. "Your Majesty, the court talks." Commander Vest stood before Leander's desk, arms crossed. "They question the propriety of this arrangement." "The court can question whatever they like." Leander didn't look up from the report he was reading. "I'm sleeping. For the first time in over a year, I can think clearly, make decisions without my mind trying to eat itself. That's all that matters." "Is it?" General Thorne leaned forward. "Because from where I'm standing, you've given a nobody herbalist access to your private chambers every night. You've made yourself vulnerable. If she wanted to slit your throat, she won't." "How do you know?" Leander finally looked up, and his eyes were cold. "Because if she wanted me dead, I'd already be dead. Now, are we done discussing my sleeping arrangements, or can we get back to the war?" They got back to the war, but Rowan felt the weight of their suspicion everywhere she went. The palace healers refused to speak to her. The servants gave her wide berth, like proximity might taint them. And the nobles, the ones who'd never noticed her before, now watched with calculating eyes, trying to figure out what game she was playing. She wasn't playing any game, she was just trying to help. But as the nights passed, something shifted between her and Leander. It started small. Brush of fingers when she arrived, his hand finding hers in the dark. The way he'd pull her closer in sleep, like his unconscious mind knew she was the thing keeping the nightmares at bay. Then came the nights when he wasn't asleep yet. "Tell me about your life," he said one night, staring at the ceiling. "Before all this." Rowan turned her head to look at him. "There's not much to tell. I learned herbs from my mother, opened a shop in the lower districts, treated coughs and fevers and broken bones." "Sounds peaceful." "It was boring." That got a small smile from him. "You'd rather be here, sleeping next to a half-mad king?" "You're not mad." "Close enough." His fingers found hers, lacing together. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm dreaming this too. If I'll wake up and you'll be gone. I'm real." "Prove it." Before she could think better of it, Rowan squeezed his hand, hard enough to hurt a little. Leander's smile widened, convincing. But there was something else in his eyes, something hungry and careful and wanting. Something that made heat curl low in Rowan's stomach. They were crossing lines. She knew it, he knew it, and neither of them stopped. 3 weeks after it started, Rowan woke to screaming, not outside the chambers. Inside. Leander thrashed beside her, caught in a nightmare, his face twisted in agony. Words poured out of him, broken, desperate. "No, Mara, run! Get them out! I can't!" Blackwater. He was reliving Blackwater. Rowan grabbed his shoulders. "Leander, wake up! You're dreaming! Wake up!" He didn't wake. His hand shot out, catching her wrist hard enough to bruise. His eyes were open but unseeing, locked on some horror only he could witness. "They're burning, the children. I can hear them screaming by me. Leander, please." And then she felt it. A pull, like something hooking behind her ribs and dragging her down. The room flickered. For just a second, Rowan saw smoke, heard screams that weren't Leander's, felt heat that had nothing to do with the fire in the hearth. She saw the square at Blackwater. Burning, bodies in the rubble. And standing in the center of it all, surrounded by the dead, was Leander. Younger, bloodied, screaming orders that no one could hear over the roar of flames. Rowan gasped and pulled back, breaking contact. The vision shattered. She was in the chambers again, heart hammering, Leander still thrashing beside her. "Wake up!" She shook him harder. "Damn you, wake up!" His eyes focused, snapped to her face. Recognition dawned, followed by horror. Did you? His voice broke. Did you see it? Rowan's hands shook. Saw something. I don't know what. You saw Blackwater. It wasn't a question. You were there, in the nightmare with me. That's not possible. Neither is me sleeping because you're in the room, but here we are. Leander sat up, running both hands through his hair. Sweat soaked his shirt. This isn't normal, Rowan. Whatever's happening between us, it's not natural. Maybe we should stop. No. The word came out sharp, final. I'm not going back to that. I can't. But if I'm being pulled into your nightmares, then we figure out how to stop the nightmares, together. He turned to her, and the desperation was back, raw and real. Don't leave me, please. Rowan looked at him, at this king who'd become something more than a king in the dark hours of night, and felt the truth settle in her bones. She couldn't leave. Not because he commanded it, because she didn't want to. Somewhere in the past 3 weeks, between the midnight visits and the whispered conversations and the careful touches, she'd started to care. More than she should. More than was safe. I won't leave, she whispered. Relief crashed over his face, and then his mouth was on hers. The kiss was desperate, hungry, like he'd been holding back for weeks and finally couldn't anymore. His hands came up to frame her face, and Rowan kissed him back with equal desperation, fingers tangling in his hair. This was wrong, improper, dangerous. She didn't care. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together. We can't, Rowan whispered, even as her hands stayed locked in his hair. I know. The court would... I know. Leander. He kissed her again, softer this time, tender in a way that made her chest ache. I don't care about the court, he said against her lips. I don't care about propriety. I care about this. About you. You barely know me. I know you're the only person in 14 months who's made me feel human again. That's enough. It should have been a red flag. Too much too fast, built on desperation and proximity and the strange magic binding them together. But Rowan kissed him anyway. They fell back against the pillows, and for the first time since this started, propriety shattered completely. Hands explored, clothes loosened. The careful distance they'd maintained collapsed under the weight of want. And when Leander finally fell asleep hours later, Rowan wrapped in his arms, she knew nothing would ever be simple again. Morning came with pounding on the door. Your Majesty! Emergency council meeting! Leander jerked awake, instantly alert. Military training overriding everything else. Rowan scrambled to sit up, yanking her dress back into place, panic flooding through her. 5 minutes, Leander called out, already moving. He turned to Rowan, and for a second the softness was back. Then the king returned, walls slamming into place. Go through the servants' passage, quickly. She didn't argue, didn't say goodbye, just fled. But she could feel eyes on her as she hurried through the corridors. Servants who knew, guards who'd seen, the truth spreading like poison through the palace. By the time Rowan reached the street, the rumors had evolved. The sleepless king had taken a lover. A common herbalist had seduced her way into the royal bed. Witchcraft. Scandal. Shame. Rowan made it to her shop and locked the door behind her, heart hammering, mind racing. What had she done? She'd kissed a king, shared his bed in every sense that mattered, and somewhere between the nightmares and the whispers and the desperate touches, she'd fallen for him. A sharp knock on her door made her jump. Miss Vale? Open up. She recognized that voice. Commander Vess. Rowan opened the door to find 3 guards and the commander standing on her doorstep, faces grim. You're to come with us, Vess said. Why? What's happened? The king has collapsed. He's not waking up, and you're the only one who might be able to bring him back. The world tilted. Rowan grabbed her medicine bag and followed them at a run, fear clawing up her throat. Because she'd felt something last night. When she saw Blackwater, when she touched the nightmare. Something had latched onto her, and now it had pulled Leander down into the dark, and she was the only one who could follow him there. The palace corridors blurred past as Rowan ran, guards flanking her on all sides. Her medicine bag slammed against her hip with each stride, useless weight. Whatever had taken Leander down wasn't something herbs could fix. She knew it, felt it in her bones. The nightmare had followed her out. They burst through the king's chamber doors to chaos. Healers surrounded the bed, their hands glowing with diagnostic spells that flickered and died. The royal physician stood back, face ashen, shaking his head. "Nothing works," he was saying. "No stimulant, no spell, no—" He stopped when he saw Rowan. Every head in the room turned. The weight of their stares pressed down like physical force. Accusation, suspicion, blame. "Out!" Commander Vess's voice cut through the tension. "All of you, now!" "Commander, we can't just—" "I said out." Her hand went to her sword hilt. Not a threat, a promise. The healers fled. The physician lingered, opened his mouth to protest, then thought better of it when Vess's eyes narrowed. He left too. The door slammed shut, leaving Rowan alone with Vess and the unconscious king. Leander lay motionless on the bed, skin pale as death, chest barely rising. His eyes moved beneath closed lids, rapid, frantic, trapped in something he couldn't wake from. "What did you do to him?" Vess's voice was quiet, deadly. "Nothing, I swear." "Don't lie to me." The commander crossed the space between them in 2 strides, getting in Rowan's face. 3 weeks ago, the king couldn't sleep. Now he can't wake up. The only variable that changed was you. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I don't care about your intentions. I care about results." Vess grabbed Rowan's arm, grip bruising. "Fix him, or I'll throw you in the deepest cell we have and let you rot there until he wakes up on his own." "I don't know how." "Then figure it out." Vess released her with a shove. "You got into his head somehow. Get back in there and bring him out." Rowan stared at the commander, then at Leander's unconscious form. Her hand trembled as she reached for his. The moment their skin made contact, the world tilted. She fell. Not physically. Something else. Something deeper. The chamber dissolved into fog and silence, and Rowan found herself standing in a place that shouldn't exist. Gray mist pressed in from all sides, thick enough to choke on. The ground beneath her feet felt solid but looked like smoke. No sky, no horizon, just endless fog and the sound of her own breathing. "Leander?" Her voice came out muffled, swallowed by the mist. No answer. Rowan walked forward, or what felt like forward, hands out in front of her. The fog parted reluctantly, revealing nothing but more fog. Then she heard it. Screaming, distant, anguished, a sound that carved itself into her spine and refused to let go. She ran toward it. The mist thickened, fighting her every step. Her lungs burned, her legs felt like lead. But she pushed through, following that terrible sound, until the fog broke. Rowan stumbled into a clearing that wasn't a clearing, a pocket of space carved out of the mist, and in the center of it stood Leander. He faced away from her, shoulders rigid, hands clenched into fists at his sides. Around him the fog had taken shape, twisted, wrong shapes that moved at the edges of vision, faces in the mist, reaching hands, mouths open in silent screams. The dead of Blackwater. "Leander!" Rowan's voice came out steadier than she felt. "It's me. I'm here." He didn't turn, didn't acknowledge her at all. She moved closer, and the shapes in the fog shifted. Watching. Waiting. "You shouldn't be here." His voice sounded hollow. Empty. "This is my punishment, mine alone." "This isn't punishment. It's a prison." "Same thing." He finally turned and Rowan's breath caught. His eyes were wrong. Gray storm clouds shot through with something darker, black veins spreading from his pupils like cracks in glass. The shadows under his eyes had deepened into bruises, and his skin had taken on an ashen quality that made him look half dead already. "What's happening to you?" she whispered. "The same thing that's been happening since Blackwater. I'm paying the price." He gestured at the shapes surrounding them. "They won't let me forget. Won't let me rest. Every night I close my eyes, they're waiting. That's why you couldn't sleep. That's why I deserve not to sleep." The black veins pulsed in his eyes. "I failed them, Rowan. All of them. Every face you see here is blood on my hands." "That's not true, isn't it?" He moved toward her, and the fog moved with him. "I was their king, their protector. And when Kyle's forces came, I was on the wrong side of the village making tactical decisions while they burned. I heard them screaming, and I didn't. His voice broke. The shapes in the fog pressed closer, and Rowan saw them more clearly now. A woman with 3 children clinging to her skirts, an old man clutching a kitchen knife, a young couple, hands intertwined even in death. "I see," she said softly. "No, you don't." Leander's hands came up to grip her shoulders. Not gentle, desperate. "You see what I want you to see. The version of me that's still worth saving. But there's nothing left worth saving, Rowan. I'm hollow, used up. And you being here, in my head, in my nightmares, you're going to get dragged down with me. Then we get dragged down together." "No." He released her like she'd burned him. "No. You need to leave, wake up, get as far from me as possible. I'm not leaving you here. You don't have a choice." His voice rose, echoing in the fog. The shapes drew back, and for the first time, Rowan saw something else moving in the mist. Something bigger, darker, circling them like a predator. "What is that?" Fear crawled up her spine. Leander's jaw tightened. "The real reason I can't wake up." The thing in the fog moved closer. Rowan caught glimpses. Too many limbs, too many eyes, a shape that her mind refused to process. It smelled like smoke and copper, like death. "It's been feeding on my guilt," Leander said, voice dead, "growing stronger every night. And now that you're here, it can feed on you too. How do we kill it?" "We don't." He stepped between her and the circling darkness. "I send you back and I stay here. It's the only way to keep it contained. That's not a solution. That's suicide. It's practical." His eyes met hers and the black veins pulsed. "I'm already half gone, Rowan. Let me finish it before I take you with me." "No. This isn't a negotiation. You're right, it's not." Rowan moved around him, putting herself between Leander and the thing in the fog. "Because I'm not leaving. Whatever this is, whatever's hunting you, we face it together or not at all." "You stubborn—" He grabbed her arm, spun her around. "Do you have any idea what you're risking? This thing will devour you. It'll take everything you are and leave nothing but—" "Then it better be hungry." She pulled free, turned back to face the darkness. "Because I'm not going anywhere." The thing stopped circling. Rowan felt its attention settle on her like a physical weight, cold, ancient, hungry. Then it spoke. Not with words, with memories. Images flooded her mind. Blackwater burning, children screaming, Leander standing frozen while the world ended around him. But these weren't just memories, they were accusations, failures. Every moment he'd hesitated, every choice he'd made wrong, every life he couldn't save, all of it compressed into a single crushing wave of guilt. Rowan gasped, knees buckling. Leander caught her. "I told you, it feeds on guilt, on shame, on everything we hate about ourselves." "Then why—" She fought to breathe through the pressure. "Why haven't you fought back?" "Because it's right." His voice cracked. "Every accusation, every failure, it shows me. It's all true. I did fail them. I do deserve this." "No." Rowan forced herself upright, forced herself to look at the thing circling them. "You deserve to grieve, to carry the weight of what happened, but you don't deserve to be destroyed by it." "There's a difference?" "Yes." She turned in his arms, hands coming up to frame his face, made him look at her instead of the darkness. "Grief honors the dead. This thing doesn't honor anything. It just consumes." The black veins in his eyes pulsed faster. "I can't let it go," he whispered. "If I stop carrying this guilt, if I stop punishing myself, then their deaths meant nothing." "Their deaths already mean nothing if you let this thing win." Rowan's thumbs traced the shadows under his eyes. "You want to honor them? Live. Rule. Make sure Blackwater never happens again. That's how you carry them. Not this." Something shifted in his expression. A crack in the armor. The thing in the fog shrieked. Not sound. Emotion. Rage and hunger and desperate need all compressed into a psychic scream that drove Rowan to her knees. Leander caught her again, but she could feel him wavering. The thing had sunk its claws deep, and it wasn't letting go without a fight. "It's too strong," he said. "I can't—" "Yes, you can." Rowan grabbed his hands, laced their fingers together. You're not alone anymore. Use me. My strength, my... The thing struck. One moment Rowan was standing. The next she was drowning in darkness. The creature wrapped around her mind like a fist, squeezing, showing her things, her own failures, her own guilt, every patient she'd lost, every mistake she'd made, every moment she'd been too slow or too weak or too... Get off her! Leander's voice cut through the assault. The pressure eased. Rowan gasped for air that didn't exist, vision clearing just enough to see Leander facing down the thing in the fog. His hands were empty, but his eyes, the black veins had spread, covering half his face now, but beneath them something else burned, something fierce. You want guilt? He snarled at the darkness. You want shame? Take mine. Leave her alone. The creature surged forward. Leander didn't flinch. The thing hit him like a tidal wave, and Rowan watched in horror as it began to drag him down into the fog. His knees hit the ground. His hands clawed at nothing. The black veins spread faster, consuming more of him. No! Rowan threw herself at him, wrapping her arms around his chest. You don't get to sacrifice yourself. Not for me. Not for anyone. Let go. No. She held tighter, even as the darkness tried to pry her away. You said we were bound. Prove it. Let me carry some of this weight. It'll destroy you. Then we get destroyed together. She pressed her forehead against his back, feeling his heart hammer against her arms. I'm not leaving, Leander. I'm not letting go. So either we fight this thing side by side, or we go down together. Your choice. For a long moment, he didn't move. The creature pulled harder, trying to drag them both under. Then Leander's hands came up to cover hers. Together, he said. The fog exploded. Not outward, inward, collapsing in on itself as Leander stopped fighting alone and started fighting with her. Rowan felt the shift. The way their connection, whatever strange bond had formed over 3 weeks of midnight visits, suddenly flared to life like a lit fuse. The creature shrieked again, but this time it sounded different, uncertain, afraid, because it fed on isolation, on guilt carried alone, shame born in silence. And suddenly its prey wasn't alone anymore. Push back, Rowan said through gritted teeth. Show it you're not just guilt. You're more than Blackwater. I don't know how... Yes, you do. She held him tighter. You're a king, a warrior, a man who's carried an empire on his shoulders for years. That thing only sees your failures. Make it see everything else. Leander's breathing changed, steadied. The black veins stopped spreading. Rowan felt him reach for something inside himself. Not the guilt, not the shame, but the strength beneath it. The core of iron that had kept him standing when anyone else would have broken. The fog began to thin. The creature writhed, losing its grip as Leander stopped feeding it, stopped believing he deserved to be devoured. That's it, Rowan whispered. Keep going. I can't do this alone. You're not alone. I'm right here. His hands tightened over hers, and together they pushed. The darkness shattered like glass. Light flooded in, not sunshine, not warmth, just the absence of that crushing fog. The shapes of Blackwater's dead faded, not erased but no longer trapping him. And the creature, it was still there, smaller, wounded, but not gone. It circled at a distance now, wary, watching with too many eyes. Why isn't it dead? Rowan demanded. Because the guilt isn't gone. Leander stood, pulling her up with him. It's just quieter, manageable. This thing will always be here as long as I remember Blackwater. Then we'll fight it every time it gets too loud. He turned to look at her, and the black veins were receding. Still there, faint lines around his eyes, but no longer consuming him. We, he repeated softly. We. Rowan met his gaze. You're stuck with me now, for better or worse. Something shifted in his expression. The walls he'd built so carefully, the armor he wore even in sleep, all of it cracked just a little wider. I think I'm falling in love with you, he said. The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Rowan's breath caught. Leander, I know it's too fast. I know it's built on desperation and proximity and this... He gestured at the fog around them. This nightmare bond we share. But I don't care. You walked into my hell because I asked you to, and you're standing here telling me I'm worth saving when I can barely believe it myself. So yes, I'm falling, and I don't want to stop. Rowan should have said something careful, something rational, should have pointed out all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Instead, she kissed him. Fierce and desperate and real, her hands tangling in his hair, his arms wrapping around her waist. The fog pressed in around them, but it didn't matter. Nothing mattered except this. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Leander rested his forehead against hers. "We need to wake up," he said. "I know. The court is going to tear us apart. I know. This isn't going to be easy. Nothing worth having ever is." Rowan pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "Can you wake up now? Or is that thing going to—" "I can wake up." He glanced at the creature still circling in the distance. "It's not gone, but it's not strong enough to hold me anymore. Not with you as an anchor." "Then let's go home." They closed their eyes together, and Rowan felt the fog begin to dissolve, the nightmare realm releasing its grip as Leander finally found the strength to claw his way back to consciousness. The world lurched, and then Rowan was gasping, jerking upright in the king's chambers, his hand still clasped in hers. Leander's eyes snapped open. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other, confirming it was real. They were back. Then the door slammed open. Commander Vess stormed in, followed by half the palace guard. "He's awake. Good. Now get her out of—" "No." Leander's voice cut through the room like a blade. He sat up, still holding Rowan's hand. "She stays." Vess's eyes narrowed. "Your Majesty, with respect, I don't recall asking for your opinion, Commander." He swung his legs off the bed, standing on slightly unsteady feet. Rowan stood with him, their hands still locked together. "Rowan stays. By my side. As long as she's willing." The room went silent. Rowan felt every eye on her, judging, calculating, condemning. "The court will never accept this," Vess said quietly. "A commoner, no title, no blood, no—" "The court will accept what I tell them to accept." Leander's voice went hard. "Or they can find a new king." "You can't be serious." "I'm perfectly serious." He turned to face Vess fully, and Rowan saw the king emerge. Cold, commanding, absolute. For 14 months, I was barely functional, making decisions while half mad with exhaustion, holding this kingdom together through sheer stubbornness. And in 3 weeks, she's given me more clarity than all your healers and physicians combined. So yes, Commander, she stays. Vess's jaw worked. Her hand flexed on her sword hilt. The guard shifted uneasily. Then General Thorne pushed through the crowd, face grim. "A word, Your Majesty. In private." Leander's eyes didn't leave Vess. "Speak." "Not here, not in front of—" Thorne's gaze flicked to Rowan. "Her. Anything you have to say to me can be said in front of Rowan." "Fine." Thorne's voice dropped low, dangerous. "The nobles are talking. They're saying you've been bewitched, compromised, that she's using magic or seduction, or both to control you." "Let them talk." "It's more than talk!" Thorne slammed his fist against the doorframe. "Lord Carver is gathering support. Councilman Wraith is asking questions. Even some of your own guard are whispering about—" "About what?" Leander's voice went deadly quiet. Thorne hesitated. Then, "A coup. If you don't distance yourself from her, they're planning to remove you from power." The words fell like stones into still water. Rowan's hand tightened in Leander's. "Then I should go. This isn't worth— so." "Yes, it is." He turned to her, and his eyes were fierce. "You are worth a kingdom, worth a crown, worth everything they're threatening to take." "Leander, be reasonable, Bercia." "I am being reasonable." He looked back at Thorne and Vess. "You want to know what happened when I was unconscious? She followed me into a nightmare that's been eating me alive for over a year. She faced down something that would have destroyed her just to pull me back. And she did it without hesitation. So tell me, Commander, General, which of you would do the same?" Silence. "That's what I thought." Leander's voice softened just slightly. "I'm not asking you to like this. I'm asking you to trust me. Have I ever led you wrong before?" "There's a first time for everything," Vess muttered. But she stepped back. The guards followed her lead, and slowly, reluctantly, the crowd dispersed. Until only Thorne remained, arms crossed, face unreadable. "You're making a mistake, he said finally. "Maybe." Leander didn't release Rowan's hand. But it's my mistake to make. Thorne shook his head and left. The door closed. Rowan and Leander stood alone in the chambers, the weight of what just happened settling over them like a shroud. "You shouldn't have done that," Rowan whispered. "I know. They're going to come for you now, for both of us." "I know." He pulled her closer, arms wrapping around her waist. "But I meant what I said. You're worth fighting for. Even if it costs you the crown?" His jaw tightened. Even then, Rowan wanted to believe him, wanted to think love could conquer politics and power and the machinations of a court that hated her. But she'd seen the looks on their faces, heard the venom in their voices. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Chatham. 3 days later, the first attempt came. Rowan was walking back from the market, arms full of supplies for her shop, when the carriage rolled up beside her. No crest, no guards, just a plain black carriage with curtains drawn. The door opened. "Get in, Miss Vale." Lord Carver's voice drifted out from the shadows inside. "We need to talk." Every instinct screamed at her to run, but curiosity, stupid, reckless curiosity, made her climb inside. Carver sat across from her, a man in his 50s with silver hair and eyes like chips of ice. He looked at her the way someone might look at an insect they were deciding whether to crush. "You're smarter than you look," he said as the carriage started moving. "Good. That'll make this easier." "Make what easier?" "Your departure." He leaned forward, hands folded on his lap. "The king is infatuated. I understand that. Young men make foolish choices when presented with—" His gaze raked over her. "Temptation. But infatuation fades. And when it does, you'll be left with nothing but enemies and a reputation in tatters." "Is there a point to this?" "The point, Miss Vale, is that I'm offering you a way out." He pulled a purse from his coat, dropped it on the seat between them. Heavy. Full. "Enough gold to set you up anywhere in the kingdom. A new life. A fresh start. All you have to do is leave. Tonight. No goodbyes. No explanations." Rowan stared at the purse. "You want to pay me to abandon him. I want to save you from the inevitable destruction that comes from reaching above your station." Carver's voice stayed pleasant. Reasonable. "The king needs a proper queen, someone with bloodlines and alliances and the training to rule. Not a, forgive me, nobody from the slums who got lucky." "Lucky." The word tasted like poison. "What else would you call it?" He smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. "You stumbled into the right place at the right time, and the king latched onto you because you gave him what he desperately needed. But that's not love, Miss Vale. That's desperation. You don't know anything about what we have. Don't I?" Carver leaned back. "I've been at this court for 30 years. I've seen kings fall for servants, nobles marry commoners, men throw away kingdoms for pretty faces. And do you know what happens every single time?" Rowan didn't answer. Tragedy. The commoner gets destroyed by a world she doesn't understand, and the king wakes up one day realizing he sacrificed everything for nothing. He nudged the purse toward her. "Take the gold. Save yourself the pain." "And if I don't?" His pleasant expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. "Then we'll find other ways to convince you." The threat hung in the air between them. The carriage stopped. Rowan looked out the window and realized they'd circled back to her shop. Carver had timed this perfectly, long enough to make his offer, short enough that no one would notice she'd been gone. "Think about it," he said as she gathered her supplies. "You have until tomorrow night. After that, the offer expires and things get unpleasant." Rowan climbed out without taking the gold. She didn't tell Leander. That night, lying beside him in the dark while he slept, peaceful now, the nightmares held at bay by her presence. She stared at the ceiling and wondered if Carver was right. Was she destroying Leander by staying? Would he wake up one day and realize he'd traded a kingdom for someone who didn't belong? "You're thinking too loud." Leander's voice startled her. He wasn't asleep after all. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Liar. He rolled onto his side, propping himself up on one elbow. "Tell me." So she did. All of it. The carriage, the offer, the threat. By the time she finished, Leander's face had gone dangerously calm. "Carver approached you directly. Not a question, a statement. Yes, and threatened you. He implied unpleasantness if I didn't take the gold. Leander was silent for a long moment. Then he threw back the covers and stood. "What are you doing?" Rowan sat up, alarm spiking through her. "Calling a council meeting." He pulled on his shirt, movements sharp and precise. "First thing tomorrow morning. If they want to threaten you, they can do it to my face." "Leander, no. That'll only make things worse." "They're already worse." He turned to her and his eyes burned. "I told you I'd fight for this. For us. Did you think I was joking? I think you're going to start a civil war over a woman you've known for 3 weeks." "No." He crossed back to the bed, cupped her face in his hands. "I'm going to defend my choice to love who I want. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." He kissed her, fierce and possessive. "And tomorrow morning, the entire court is going to learn exactly what that difference looks like." The council chamber was packed. Every noble, every councilman, every person with even a drop of influence had crowded in to witness what they clearly thought would be Rowan's downfall. She sat beside Leander at the head of the table, spine straight, hands folded in her lap, refusing to show fear, even though her heart hammered so hard she thought everyone must hear it. Leander stood, and the room fell silent. "Lord Carver," his voice carried to every corner. "Stand." Carver rose slowly, expression carefully neutral. "Your Majesty, you approached Rowan Vale yesterday, offered her gold to leave, threatened her when she refused." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Carver's smile didn't waver. "I offered her a generous opportunity to—" "You threatened her." Leander's voice cut like a whip. "Do you deny it?" "I merely pointed out the reality of her situation." "Yes or no, Carver? Did you threaten her?" The smile finally cracked. "I suggested that things might become difficult if she continued to—" "Difficult how?" Silence. Carver's jaw tightened. "Your Majesty, with respect, the court has concerns about your judgment. A common herbalist, no matter how talented, cannot possibly—" "Cannot possibly what?" Leander's hands flattened on the table. "Cannot possibly understand statecraft? Neither could you when you inherited your title at 16. Cannot possibly navigate court politics? Half this council was born into position and still can't manage it. Cannot possibly love me as anything other than a path to power?" His voice dropped. "Dangerous. That one's rich coming from the man who married 3 times for land and never once for affection." Gasps echoed around the room. Carver's face went purple. "How dare you? How dare I?" Leander laughed, sharp and humorless. "How dare you threaten someone under my protection? How dare any of you?" His gaze swept the room. "Stand there and judge her for lacking bloodlines when half of you inherited your positions through accidents of birth rather than merit." "Your Majesty," Councilman Rath tried to interject. "I'm not finished." Leander's voice rose. "For 3 weeks, Rowan has given me something none of you could. Peace. Clarity. The ability to rule without my own mind trying to destroy me. And your response is to try and drive her away with threats and gold?" He shook his head. "You want to know what that tells me? It tells me you care more about tradition than effectiveness, more about bloodlines than loyalty, more about appearances than results." "This isn't about results," someone shouted from the back. "It's about propriety, about maintaining the dignity of the crown." "The dignity of the crown?" Leander's laugh was bitter now. "Where was your concern for dignity when I was making decisions while half mad with exhaustion? When I nearly started a war with the Northern Territories because I couldn't think straight? When I signed execution orders, I didn't fully read because my hands were shaking from lack of sleep?" He leaned forward. "You didn't care about dignity then. You cared about stability. And now that I'm finally stable, you want to destroy the thing that gave me that because it doesn't fit your narrow view of acceptable." The room erupted. Voices rose, arguing, defending, attacking. Rowan sat frozen, watching it spiral out of control. Then Leander's fist slammed down on the table. The crack echoed like a gunshot. Silence fell instantly. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, voice deadly calm. "Rowan stays, by my side, with my full protection and authority. Anyone who has a problem with that can bring it to me directly, instead of slinking around making threats in carriages." His gaze found Carver. "And if I hear of one more attempt to intimidate, bribe, or harm her in any way, I will consider it an attack on the crown itself. Are we clear?" No one spoke. I said, "Are we clear?" A few reluctant nods. Good! Leander straightened. Meeting adjourned. He turned and walked out, leaving chaos in his wake. Rowan stood to follow, and the look she received could have flayed skin. Hatred, jealousy, pure, concentrated loathing. She made it to the corridor before her legs started shaking. Leander caught her arm, steadied her. You all right? They're going to kill me. The words came out matter of fact. Or frame me for something. Or find a way to make you regret this so thoroughly you'll beg me to leave. Let them try. Leander... He pulled her into an alcove away from prying eyes and kissed her hard enough to bruise. When he pulled back, his eyes were fierce. I'm not going to regret you, he said, no matter what they do, no matter how hard they push. You're mine, and I don't give up what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it sent heat flooding through her veins. Yours, she repeated softly. Mine. His hands framed her face. Say it. I'm yours. Something dark and satisfied flickered across his expression. Good, because I'm about to make that very, very official. Before she could ask what that meant, he was pulling her down the corridor toward the throne room, moving with purpose. Leander, what are you up? Making sure they can't touch you. They burst into the throne room, startling the guards. Leander didn't slow down, just kept walking until he stood before the throne, Rowan's hand locked in his. Summon the high priest, he ordered, now. One of the guards ran. Rowan's heart climbed into her throat. What are you doing? Protecting you. The only way I know how. He turned to face her, still holding her hand. They can't threaten a commoner, but they can't touch a queen. The world tilted. You want to marry me? Her voice came out barely a whisper. I want to make sure you're safe, that no one can drive you away or hurt you or... He stopped, jaw tight. I want you beside me, officially, permanently, if you'll have me. This is insane. Probably. We've known each other 3 weeks, 24 days. I've been counting. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I know it's fast. I know it's reckless. But I also know I've never been more certain of anything in my life. So yes, I'm asking, will you marry me? Rowan stared at him, this king who'd just declared war on his own court for her, who looked at her like she was worth more than kingdoms, who'd followed her into nightmares and come back different. She should say no, should point out all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Instead, she said, yes. The word hung in the air between them. Then Leander was kissing her again, fierce and claiming, and Rowan kissed back with equal desperation because she'd just agreed to marry a king, and there was no taking it back now. The door opened. The high priest entered, followed by half the court who'd clearly heard the summons and come running. They stopped dead at the sight of Leander and Rowan wrapped around each other, the king's hand possessive at her waist. Your Majesty? The priest's voice trembled slightly. You summoned me? Leander pulled back from the kiss but didn't release Rowan. I did. I need you to perform a marriage, tonight. Gasps echoed through the room. The priest paled. Tonight? But the preparations, the announcements, the proper vetting of bloodlines? Tonight. Leander's voice left no room for argument. Can you do it? Or should I find someone who can? The priest swallowed hard. Yes, Your Majesty. I can do it. Good. Leander turned to the assembled court. You're all witnesses. 3 hours from now, in the palace chapel, I'm marrying Rowan Vale. Anyone who has objections can voice them now or forever hold their, I object. Lord Carver's voice rang out. Of course he did. Leander's eyes went cold. On what grounds? On the grounds that this woman has clearly bewitched you. No sane king would throw away centuries of tradition for a nobody he's known less than a month. Carver stepped forward, flanked by several other nobles. We demand she be tested for magical manipulation before any marriage takes place. Tested how? Blood magic, truth spells. Whatever it takes to prove she hasn't compromised your mind. Rowan felt Leander tense beside her, felt the fury building under his skin. Fine, he said, voice deadly calm. Test her. But when it comes back clean, and it will, Every single one of you will bend the knee and swear fealty to your new queen. Understood? Carver's smile was sharp. Agreed. Rowan's stomach dropped, because she didn't know what the tests would show. She didn't know if the bond between her and Leander, the strange connection that let her walk into his nightmares, would register as magic. And if it did, they'd use it as proof she'd enchanted him. They'd tear them apart, and Leander, for all his power and authority, wouldn't be able to stop it. The trap had been set, and she'd just walked straight into. The testing chamber smelled like old stone and older fear. Rowan stood in the center of a circle carved into the floor, symbols etched around her that she didn't recognize. 3 mages flanked the edges, their hands already glowing with diagnostic magic. Lord Carver watched from the doorway, arms crossed, that same sharp smile never leaving his face. Leander stood beside the circle, close enough to touch, but separated by the carved line he wasn't allowed to cross during the testing. "This is unnecessary," he said for the 3rd time. "On the contrary, Your Majesty." The lead mage, a woman named Kestrel with silver hair and eyes like black glass, moved around the circle lighting candles. "If Miss Vale has nothing to hide, the testing will prove it. If she does—" She let the implication hang. Rowan's hands trembled. She clenched them into fists, forcing them still. "Begin," Carver ordered. Kestrel raised both hands, and the symbols around Rowan flared to life. Light, cold and invasive, crawled up her skin like living things. She gasped as the magic pressed into her, searching, probing, looking for traces of enchantment or manipulation. It hurt. Not physically. Worse. Like someone rifling through her memories, her emotions, her deepest thoughts, without permission. "Stop!" Leander moved toward the circle. "Don't break the barrier," Kestrel snapped. "You'll corrupt the results." He froze, jaw clenched so tight Rowan could see the muscle jumping in his cheek. The magic dug deeper. Rowan felt it hook into something inside her chest, that strange connection to Leander, the bond that let her follow him into nightmares. The magic pulled at it, and pain lanced through her skull. She cried out. "What did you find?" Carver's voice cut through the haze. Kestrel's eyes widened. "There's something. A connection. Between them." "What kind of connection?" "I don't know. I've never seen anything like it." The mage's hands moved faster, pulling more magic into the circle. "It's not traditional enchantment, not a love spell or compulsion, but there's definitely something binding them together." "Binding?" Carver stepped closer. "Elaborate. Their minds are linked. When I probe one, I feel echoes of the other. It's like they're—" Kestrel paused, searching for words. "Entangled. On a fundamental level." Murmurs rippled through the watching nobles. Leander's face had gone pale. "That doesn't mean she did anything wrong, doesn't it?" Carver's smile widened. "A mysterious connection that no mage can explain, appearing right when a common girl gains unprecedented access to the king's private chambers. Your Majesty, even you must see how suspicious this looks." "It's not suspicious, it's—" Leander's hands clenched. "It's complicated." "Then explain it." He couldn't. Rowan saw it in his eyes. He didn't understand the bond any more than she did. Kestrel pushed harder, and Rowan screamed. The magic had found the nightmare realm. She could feel it pulling at that dark space where she and Leander fought the creature born from his guilt. Could feel it trying to drag those memories into the light. "Stop!" Leander grabbed the circle's edge, and lightning arced up his arm. He jerked back, cursing. "You're hurting her." "I'm finding the truth." Kestrel's voice had gone cold. Professional. "There's a realm. A constructed space where their minds meet. Deliberately created. Maintained through—" She stopped. Her face went ashen. "What?" Carver demanded. "What did you find?" "Blood magic." The words fell like stones. "Old blood magic. The kind used to forge permanent bonds between souls." The room exploded into chaos. Nobles shouted. Guards moved forward. Carver's expression shifted from satisfaction to something darker. Rowan's knees buckled. "That's not— I didn't—" "The evidence doesn't lie." Kestrel released the spell, and Rowan collapsed to the stone floor. Someone used blood magic to bind her to the king. Whether she cast it herself or had it cast on her behalf, the result is the same. This connection is not natural. No. Leander's voice cut through the noise. No, I don't believe it. Your Majesty, the proof is irrefutable. I don't care. He moved to the circle's edge again, reaching for Rowan. Even if there's magic involved, that doesn't mean she's guilty. Maybe it happened naturally. Maybe the bond formed because blood magic doesn't happen naturally. Kestrel's voice stayed flat. Final. Someone cast this. Someone wanted you bound to her. And given who benefits most from that arrangement, all eyes turned to Rowan. She looked up from the floor, vision swimming, and saw the accusation written on every face. Even some who'd seemed sympathetic before now looked uncertain. I didn't do this, she whispered. Then who did? Carver crouched beside the circle, close enough that she could see the triumph in his eyes. Who else would have motive? Who else would benefit from the king being magically compelled to need you? I'm not compelled, Leander started. How would you know? Carver straightened, addressing the room now. Blood magic works on the subconscious. You'd never realize you were being manipulated. You'd genuinely believe you chose this. That's what makes it so insidious. Get her out of here, someone shouted from the back. Lock her up before she does more damage. Execute her for treason. Burn the witch. The voices rose, feeding off each other, building toward violence. Leander stepped into the circle. The symbols flared, trying to repel him, but he pushed through with raw force of will. Guards moved to stop him, and he drew his sword in one fluid motion. Touch her and die. The room went silent. Leander stood over Rowan, blade out, eyes wild. I don't care what your tests show. I don't care about blood magic or bonds or whatever else you think you've found. She's under my protection. Anyone who wants to take her goes through me first. Your Majesty? Commander Vess appeared in the doorway. Please, think about what you're doing. I'm protecting someone He stopped, jaw working. Someone who matters. Someone who's compromised you. Vess's voice stayed gentle. Careful. Sir, I've served you for 10 years. I've never questioned your judgment. But this, she gestured at the circle, at Rowan. This isn't you. You're not thinking clearly. My thoughts have never been clearer. Because of the magic! Carver stepped forward. Don't you see? The bond makes you believe that. Makes you think you need her. But it's artificial. False. It's not false. Leander's sword didn't waver. What I feel is real. How can you be certain? The question hung in the air. Leander's expression flickered. Just for a second. Just long enough for doubt to creep in. Rowan saw it and felt something crack in her chest. He wasn't sure. Part of him, maybe a small part, but still there, wondered if Carver was right. If the bond had manipulated him. If what he felt was real or manufactured. Leander, her voice came out broken. Look at me. He did. I didn't cast this. I swear on everything I am, I didn't know there was blood magic involved. Tears burned her eyes. But if there is, if somehow this bond is affecting your judgment, then maybe, the words stuck in her throat, maybe we should break it. No. If it's the only way to prove, I said no. He reached down, pulled her to her feet with his free hand. I don't care if there's magic. I don't care if the bond influenced me. What I feel is mine. What we have is real, and I'm not giving that up because they're scared of something they don't understand. Your Majesty, Kestrel's voice cut in. Breaking the bond would be difficult. Blood magic runs deep. It would require... I don't want it broken. Leander's voice rose. I want all of you to accept that I'm marrying her regardless of what your tests show. I want... We can't do that. Carver's voice stayed calm, reasonable. Not with evidence of magical manipulation. The law is clear. Any marriage entered under enchantment is void, and any person who uses magic to influence the crown is guilty of treason. The word treason echoed through the chamber. Rowan felt the walls closing in. Then we'll change the law, Leander said. You can't change it fast enough. General Thorne had appeared beside Vess, face grim. The nobles are already talking succession. If you push this, if you try to force through a marriage everyone knows is compromised, it's not compromised. They'll remove you from power. Thorne's voice went quiet. Carver's been building support. Half the council is ready to declare you unfit to rule. The only thing stopping them is hope that you'll see reason. Leander's sword finally lowered. You're telling me to choose, the crown or her? I'm telling you to choose the kingdom. Vess stepped closer. We need you, sir. Stable, clear-headed, leading us, not torn apart by love. The word came out bitter. That's what this is. That's what you're all so terrified of. Not the magic, not the bond, just the fact that I chose someone you didn't approve. We're terrified you didn't choose at all, Carver said softly. That the magic chose for you. Silence fell. Rowan looked at Leander and saw the war raging behind his eyes. Duty versus desire. Kingdom versus connection. Everything he'd been raised to be versus everything he'd discovered in the dark hours with her. She made the choice for him. I'll go. The words tasted like ash. I'll leave the palace, leave the city, whatever it takes to... No. His hand locked around her wrist. Don't you dare. Leander, listen to me. She pulled free, put distance between them. They're right. You can't risk the kingdom for this. For me. Watch me. I'm not worth a civil war. You're worth everything. His voice cracked. Don't you understand? For 14 months I was barely human, barely functional, and you gave me back my life, my sanity, my ability to feel something other than guilt and exhaustion. So yes, you're worth a civil war. You're worth the crown. You're worth, Gitotas. Stop! Tears spilled down Rowan's cheeks. Please stop, you're killing me. He froze. If you love me, she whispered, if any of this is real, then let me go. Keep your kingdom. Keep your people safe. Don't throw it all away for someone who what? Who loves me back? His eyes were red. Because you do, don't you? Even if the bond influenced how it started, what you feel now is real. I know it is. She wanted to deny it, wanted to lie, would have given anything to be able to say the words that would make him let her walk away cleanly, but she couldn't. Yes, she breathed. I love you. That's why I have to leave. Before he could respond, before she could lose her nerve, Rowan turned and ran. She made it 3 steps before guards blocked her path. Let her go, Leander ordered. They didn't move. I said let her so... Your Majesty. Carver's voice cut through the chaos. Miss Vale can't simply leave. Not with a treasonous charge hanging over her head. Not until we determine whether she cast the blood magic herself or was an unwitting participant. She's not staying here to be interrogated. Then she stays in a cell until we sort this out. Leander's sword came up again. Over my dead body. That can be arranged. Carver's mask finally slipped. You're not the only one with loyal guards, boy. Half the men in this room answer to me. Push this any further, and you'll find out exactly how tenuous your hold on power really is. The threat hung naked in the air. Thorn's hand went to his weapon. Vess tensed. The guards split, some moving toward Leander, others toward Carver. The kingdom was about to tear itself apart, and it was all Rowan's fault. Stop! Her voice cut through the tension. All of you, just stop! Everyone turned to look at her. I'll submit to questioning. I'll cooperate with whatever investigation you want. She met Leander's eyes. But I won't be the reason this kingdom falls apart. Lock me up. Test me. Do whatever you need to do. Just don't... Her voice broke. Don't make him choose between me and his people. Rowan, please. She looked at him, memorizing his face. Let me do this. Let me prove I'm not what they think I am. And if you can't prove it, his voice came out hoarse, if they decide you're guilty regardless of the truth? She didn't have an answer for that. Carver gestured, and guards moved forward. Gentle but firm, they took Rowan's arms. Leander started forward, and Thorn blocked his path. Sir, don't. Get out of my way. I can't do that. Thorn's voice stayed level. You charging in there right now will only make things worse. Let the investigation run its course. If she's innocent, we'll prove it. If she's not, she is innocent. The words came out savage. Then we'll prove that. Thorn's hand settled on Leander's shoulder. Trust the process. Trust us. Rowan was already being led away. She looked back once, saw Leander standing in the circle with his sword still drawn and his face shattered, and felt her heart break cleanly in two. Then the door closed, and he was gone. The cell was better than she expected. Small, but clean, with a cot and a bucket and a narrow window too high to reach. They'd left her the medicine bag, probably checked it for weapons first, and a single candle. Rowan sat on the cot and waited for the investigation that would determine whether she lived or died. Hours passed. No one came. The candle burned low. She was beginning to think they'd forgotten about her when the door finally opened. Kestrel stepped inside, followed by two other mages Rowan didn't recognize. "Miss Vale." The older woman's expression gave nothing away. "We need to ask you some questions. I'll tell you whatever you want to know." "Good." Kestrel settled onto a stool one of the other mages conjured. "Let's start with the night you first met the king. Walk me through exactly what happened." So Rowan did. Every detail she could remember. The council meeting, the way Leander had fallen asleep against her shoulder, the shocked silence that followed. "And you did nothing to facilitate this?" Kestrel asked. "No herbs, no charms, no whispered words?" "Nothing. I was grinding elecampane root for Councilman Wraith's cough, that's all." "Elecampane," one of the other mages wrote that down. "Known sedative properties." "In large doses, yes, but I hadn't even finished preparing it yet." "Still, worth noting." Kestrel leaned forward. "What about before that day? Had you ever seen the king prior to the council meeting?" "No, I'd heard of him, obviously. Everyone has, but I'd never met him." "Never treated him? Never crossed paths in the market or—" "Never." The questioning continued. Hours of it. Every moment she'd spent with Leander dissected and examined. Every touch, every conversation, every night she'd lain beside him while he slept. "And these nightmares," Kestrel said as dawn light began filtering through the high window. "You claim you could see them?" "Not at first, but that one night, when he was thrashing, I touched him and suddenly I was there, in Blackwater, watching it burn." "Interesting," Kestrel made a note. "That's not typical of blood magic bonds. Usually they facilitate connection, not shared visions. So maybe it's not blood magic." Hope flickered in Rowan's chest. "Maybe it's something else. Something natural." "There's nothing natural about two minds connecting that way." The mage's expression stayed neutral. "But you're right that it's unusual. Which raises the question, if you didn't cast this bond, who did?" "I don't know." "Think. Who benefits from you being connected to the king?" "No one. I'm nobody. I don't have enemies or allies or—" Rowan stopped. "Wait, what?" Kestrel caught the hesitation. "What did you just think of?" "It's probably nothing." "Tell me anyway." Rowan's mind raced back to that first night in Leander's chambers, the way he'd asked her to come back, the desperation in his voice. She'd assumed the bond formed because she helped him sleep, because proximity and need had created something between them. But what if it was older than that? What if someone had set this up? "Councilman Wraith," the name fell from her lips. "He's the one who insisted I sit at the war table, who made sure I was close to the king during the meeting." Kestrel's eyes sharpened. "You think Wraith cast the bond?" "I don't know, but he was very insistent I stay in the room, and he seemed almost—" She searched for the word. Unsurprised when Leander fell asleep, like he'd been expecting it. The mages exchanged glances. "Wraith has no magical talent," one of them said. "But he has resources." Kestrel stood. "And connections. If he wanted a bond cast, he could have hired someone to do it." "Why would he want that?" Rowan asked. "What does he gain from me being connected to the king?" "That's an excellent question." Kestrel moved toward the door. "Stay here. We'll be back." They left, and Rowan was alone again. Her mind spun. Could Wrath really be behind this? The old councilman had always seemed kind, gentle, not the type to manipulate people with blood magic. But then again, she barely knew him. Hours crawled past. The candle died. Rowan dozed fitfully on the cot, dreams full of fog and reaching hands. She woke to the cell door slamming open. Commander Vest stood in the doorway, face grim. "Come with me." "What's happening?" "Wraith is dead." The words didn't make a sense for a second. Then they hit like a physical blow. "What?" "Found in his chambers an hour ago. Poison." Vest gestured sharply. "Move. The king wants to see you." Rowan stumbled after the commander, mind reeling. Wraith was dead. The man who might have been behind the blood magic, who might have had answers, was gone. Too convenient, too clean. They reached the throne room to find chaos. Nobles arguing, guards stationed at every entrance, and Leander pacing like a caged wolf in front of the throne. He stopped when he saw her. For a heartbeat, they just stared at each other across the crowded room. Then Leander was moving, crossing the space in long strides, pulling Rowan into his arms before anyone could stop him. "Are you hurt?" His hands moved over her, checking for injuries. "Did they—" "I'm fine." She caught his wrists. "Leander, what's going on?" "Wraith is dead, poisoned. And before he died, he confessed." Leander's eyes were wild. "He's the one who commissioned the blood magic bond. He hired a rogue mage to cast it the night before you came to the palace." Rowan's stomach dropped. "Why?" "Because he was working for Carver." The room spun. "What?" Leander's hands tightened on her arms. "Carver planned this. All of it. He knew the court would never accept me marrying a commoner, so he set it up. Had Wraith hire a mage to create a bond between us, made sure you were positioned close to me during the council meeting, then waited for the connection to take hold." His voice turned savage. "Once we were bonded and I'd declared my intention to marry you, he'd discover the blood magic and use it as proof you'd manipulated me. The scandal would be enough to remove me from power and install him as regent." "That's—" Rowan couldn't find words. "That's insane. That's treason." Carver's voice cut through the room. Everyone turned. The Lord stood near the throne, flanked by guards. But these weren't the palace guards. These were his personal men, armor marked with his house sigil. "You just confessed," Leander said quietly, "in front of the entire court." "Did I?" Carver's smile was razor sharp. "I heard you make accusations. I haven't confirmed anything." "Wraith's confession. Is the word of a dead traitor who'd say anything under torture or threat of execution?" Carver spread his hands. "Without proof, it's just your word against mine. And right now, Your Majesty, my word carries more weight." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact." Carver gestured and more guards appeared, dozens of them, filing into the throne room from every entrance. "I have 40 men in this palace who answer to me. You have maybe 20 loyal guards left. The numbers aren't in your favor." Thorn and Vess moved to flank Leander, weapons drawn. The room held its breath. "So here's what's going to happen," Carver continued, voice pleasant, conversational. "You're going to step down. Quietly. Cite exhaustion or grief or whatever excuse preserves your dignity. I'll take over as regent until the council selects a new king. And if I refuse, then we do this the hard way." Carver's smile widened. "Your choice, boy. Abdicate or bleed." Silence stretched tight as wire. Rowan felt Leander's hands trembling against her arms, felt the rage and helplessness warring inside him. He couldn't win this, not with force. Carver had outmaneuvered him completely. "Let me go," Rowan whispered. "What?" "Give me to him." She pulled back to look Leander in the eye. "Tell Carver he was right, that I manipulated you with blood magic. Have me executed for treason. It removes his justification for removing you from power." "No." The word came out flat, final. "Leander, it's the only way." "I don't care." His hands came up to frame her face. "I'm not sacrificing you to save the crown." "Then you'll lose both." "I know." His forehead pressed against hers. "But I'd rather lose everything than become the kind of king who trades lives for political convenience." Carver laughed. "How noble, how utterly useless." He gestured, and his guards moved forward. Thorn and Vess stepped up to meet them, and the throne room exploded into violence. Rowan was wrenched away from Leander as guards swarmed between them. She saw him draw his sword, saw Vess take down 2 men with brutal efficiency, saw Thorn fighting like a man possessed. But there were too many. For every guard loyal to Leander, Carver had 2. Within minutes, it was over. Leander was disarmed, forced to his knees, a blade at his throat. Vess and Thorn were down, bleeding but alive. And Rowan was held between 2 of Carver's men, their grip bruising on her arms. Carver approached Leander slowly, savoring his victory. "Last chance," he said. "Abdicate." Live in comfortable exile, or I kill everyone you care about and take the crown anyway. Leander's eyes found Rowan's across the room. She saw the choice forming behind his gaze, saw him weighing her life against his pride. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't you dare." His jaw tightened. Then he looked at Carver and said, "I abdicate, on one condition. You're not in a position to negotiate. Rowan goes free. No charges, no investigation, no consequences. She walks out of here and you never touch her again." Carver considered this. "Agreed, though I can't imagine she'll get far." "What does that mean?" "The blood magic bond, Your Majesty." Carver's smile turned cruel. "It goes both ways. She's as bound to you as you are to her. And bonds like that don't respond well to separation." He glanced at Rowan. "I give her 3 days before the withdrawal kills her. Maybe less." Ice flooded Rowan's veins. "You're lying," Leander said. "Ask your mages." Carver gestured at Kestrel, who'd been watching from the sidelines. "Tell him." The mage's face had gone pale. "He's not wrong. Blood bonds create dependency. Prolonged separation can be fatal for both parties." "Then break the bond," Leander demanded. "You said it was possible." "I said it was difficult, not that I could do it." Kestrel's voice dropped. "Breaking a bond that deep requires the original caster, and whoever Wraith hired is long gone. Probably dead." Rowan felt the trap snap shut. If she stayed, Carver would use her as leverage against Leander forever. If she left, the bond would kill her within days, and Leander, separated from her, would likely suffer the same fate. There was no way out. No clever solution. No escape. "So you see," Carver said pleasantly, "everyone loses, except me. How delightful." Leander looked at Rowan, and she saw something break in his expression. This was it. The moment he finally accepted he couldn't save her, couldn't save himself, couldn't stop the world from taking everything he cared about. His shoulders dropped, his head bowed. Defeat, total and absolute. Carver gestured, and his men hauled Leander to his feet. "Take him to the North Tower. Comfortable rooms, plenty of books. Let him live out his days in peace." His eyes found Rowan. "And escort Miss Vale to the gates. Give her enough gold for a week's lodging. She'll need it." "No." Leander tried to pull free. "You can't." "I can. I have. It's done." Carver turned away, dismissing them both with a wave. "Goodbye, Your Majesty. It's been a pleasure destroying you." The guards dragged Leander toward one door, Rowan toward another. She watched him fight, watched him struggle against the hands holding him, watched him scream her name, and then the doors closed between them. Rowan was marched through corridors that blurred together, out into a courtyard where morning sun felt like mockery, toward gates that stood open and waiting. They shoved a purse of gold into her hands, pushed her through the gates, slammed them shut behind her. And just like that, Rowan was free and doomed. She stood in the street outside the palace, clutching useless gold, feeling the bond in her chest already starting to ache. 3 days, Carver had said. Maybe less. The smart thing would be to run, get as far from the capital as possible, find a quiet place to die in peace. But Rowan had never been particularly smart, and she'd be damned if she let Carver win without a fight. Her hands stopped shaking, her spine straightened. If the bond was going to kill her anyway, she might as well use the time she had left doing something useful. Like finding the mage who'd cast it, like breaking it from the source, like burning Carver's entire plan to the ground. Rowan turned away from the palace gates and walked into the city, medicine bag over her shoulder, gold in her pocket, and 3 days to save the man she loved. The countdown had started, and she wasn't going to waste a single second. The lower districts smelled like home. Rowan moved through familiar streets, past her abandoned shop, toward the one place she knew might have answers. The Black Rose wasn't technically legal. It existed in the gray space between tavern and information broker, where people came to buy secrets and sell souls. Rowan had treated the owner's daughter once. Nasty case of blood poisoning that would have killed her without the right herbs. She was hoping that earned her some goodwill. The door was locked. She knocked anyway. A slot opened. Eyes peered through. "We're closed. Tell Mira that Rowan Vale needs to call in her debt." The eyes widened. The slot closed. 30 seconds later, the door opened. Mira herself stood there, a woman in her 40s with scars on her hands and kindness in her eyes that she reserved for exactly 3 people in the entire world. "You look like hell," she said. "Feel worse." Rowan stepped inside. "I need information." "About?" "A rogue mage, one who works blood magic bonds. Would have been hired about a month ago by Councilman Wraith, or someone working for him." Mira's expression went carefully neutral. "That's dangerous information." "I know, that's why I'm asking you." The older woman studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "You saved my daughter's life, I owe you, but what you're asking could get us both killed." "I'm dying anyway." 3 days, maybe less." "The bond? You know about it?" "Everyone knows about it. The king's common lover, bound by blood magic, locked in a cell, then thrown out on her ass." Mira moved toward the back of the tavern. "Carver's been spreading the story all morning, making sure everyone knows you're a manipulative witch who tried to seduce her way to power." Rage flared hot in Rowan's chest. "I didn't." "I know you didn't." Mira poured 2 glasses of something amber, slid one across the bar. "Drink. Then tell me what you need." So Rowan did. All of it. The bond, the nightmares, Leander's abdication, Carver's coup. By the time she finished, Mira's face had gone hard. "That bastard!" She downed her drink in one swallow. "Wraith came to me first, about 3 months ago, asked if I knew anyone who could cast a blood bond." Rowan's breath caught. "What did you tell him?" "Told him to go to hell. Blood magic's evil work. I don't trade in that." Mira refilled her glass. "But I knew someone who might. A mage named Vex. Works out of the warehouse district. Deals in the kind of magic that'll rot your soul if you're not careful." "Is he still there?" "Probably. Vex doesn't move around much. Too paranoid." Mira wrote an address on a scrap of paper. "But Rowan, listen to me. This mage, he's not going to help you out of the goodness of his heart. You'll need leverage. Something he wants more than Carver's gold." "What does he want?" "Freedom." Mira's eyes met hers. "Carver's had Vex on a leash for years, forcing him to cast spells, create bonds, do all sorts of nasty work. If you can offer Vex a way out, a real way, with protection and means to disappear, he might break your bond." "I don't have protection or means. You have a king who loves you." Mira's voice gentled. "Even if he's not king anymore, Leander still has loyal people. Use them." Rowan looked at the address in her hand, felt hope and desperation war in her chest. This could work. Or it could get her killed before the bond finished the job. Either way, she was running out of time. She stood, pocketed the address. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet, just—" Mira's hand caught her arm. "Be careful. Vex is dangerous. And if Carver finds out you're still in the city, still fighting, he'll kill me." "I know." Rowan managed to smile. "But I'd rather die fighting than waste away in some border town waiting for the bond to stop my heart." Mira nodded slowly, released her. "Then go. And may whatever gods you believe in watch over you." Rowan left the Black Rose and headed for the warehouse district, the address burning in her pocket and time bleeding away with every heartbeat. The bond in her chest was already pulling tighter. She had 3 days. She was going to make them. The warehouse district stank of rust and rot. Rowan moved through narrow alleys where the sun didn't reach, stepping over refuse and worse, following the address Mira had given her. The bond in her chest pulsed with each heartbeat. Not painful yet, but present. A reminder that the clock was ticking. She found the building tucked between 2 abandoned factories. No sign, no indication anyone lived there, just a sagging door and windows covered in grime. Rowan knocked. Nothing. She knocked harder. The door swung open to reveal a man so thin, he looked like he might snap in a strong wind. Gray hair, grayer skin, eyes that had seen too much and stopped caring. He looked at Rowan with the flat affect of someone who'd given up on being surprised by anything. "Vex?" she asked. "Who's asking?" "Someone who needs a blood bond broken." His expression didn't change. Not interested. He started to close the door. Rowan jammed her foot in the gap. "Carver sent you to cast a bond between me and the king. I want you to undo it." Now something flickered in his eyes. Fear. "Don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. Councilman Wraith hired you on Carver's orders. You cast the bond. and now it's killing me. She pushed against the door. I have 3 days. Help me break it, and I'll get you out from under Carver's thumb. You can't promise that. Try me. Vex studied her through the crack in the door. Whatever he saw made him step back and let her inside. The warehouse interior was worse than the outside. Dark, cluttered with magical components that reeked of decay. Symbols drawn on every wall in what looked like dried blood. You live here? Rowan couldn't keep the disgust out of her voice. I exist here. Vex moved to a table covered in bottles and jars. Living requires freedom. I stopped doing that about 5 years ago, when Carver got his hooks in you. He has a talent for finding people with skills and no options. Vex's hands shook as he sorted through his supplies. I was dying, cancer eating through my lungs. He offered me a cure in exchange for service. I was desperate enough to take it. And now you're his personal mage. His puppet. The correction came out bitter. He pulls the strings. I cast whatever spells he wants, no matter how dark, no matter who gets hurt. Rowan felt a flash of sympathy despite herself. The bond you cast on me and Leander, was that your idea? Nothing I do is my idea. Vex finally turned to face her. Carver wanted the king compromised, wanted evidence he could use to take the crown. I gave him what he asked for. Can you break it? Yes. Relief flooded through her. Then do it, please. I'll pay whatever. It'll kill you both. The relief died. Vex's expression stayed flat. Blood bonds don't break clean. They shatter. And when they do, they take pieces of the people bound together. Usually the pieces that keep them alive. There has to be another way. There isn't. He picked up a jar filled with something that squirmed. The only safe way to break a blood bond is a gradual separation over months. Distance increased slowly until the connection weakens enough to sever without killing anyone. But you don't have months. I have 3 days. Then you're dead. He set the jar down. Unless... Rowan's hands clenched. Unless what? Unless you strengthen the bond first. Make it so strong that when it breaks, there's enough excess power to absorb the shock. Keep you both alive through the severing. How do I strengthen it? Vex's eyes met hers. You complete it. The words hung in the air. What does that mean? But Rowan already knew, could feel it in her bones. Blood bonds are designed to create permanent connections. Marriage bonds, soul bonds, the kind that last lifetimes. Vex's voice stayed clinical, detached. Right now, yours is incomplete, functional but not fully anchored. To complete it, you'd need to consummate it, Rowan finished. Essentially, though it's less about the physical act and more about the emotional commitment. True vulnerability, complete trust. He shrugged. The kind of intimacy that makes two souls recognize each other as permanent. And if we do that, then you can break it without killing us? Maybe. The math is complicated, but it's your only chance. Rowan's mind raced. To save themselves, she and Leander would need to make the bond stronger, make themselves more vulnerable to each other. Then trust this broken mage to sever something that had literally become part of their souls. It was insane. It was also the only option she had. I need to see him first, before I decide. He's locked in the North Tower, Carver's guards everywhere. Vex turned back to his bottles. You won't get within 100 yards without being caught. Then help me get caught by the right people. Something that might have been a smile crossed Vex's face. You've got spine. I'll give you that. I've got 48 hours before this bond starts shutting down my organs. Spine is all I have left. Rowan pulled out the purse of gold Carver's men had given her, dropped it on the table. This and gold, which I'm offering you, all of it, plus a promise that if we survive this, I'll make sure Leander gives you sanctuary, a new name, a new life. Whatever you need to disappear. The king has no power anymore. The king has loyal people, Commander Vess, General Thorne, others. She leaned forward. Help me get to him. Help me break this bond. And I swear on everything I am, we'll get you free. Vex stared at the gold for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small vial of red liquid. Drink this. It'll mark you with a tracking sigil, invisible to everyone except Carver's mages. He set the vial in her hand. I'll send word to Carver that I've located you. His men will come, and when they do, make sure they take you to the North Tower instead of killing you outright. How do I do that? Tell them you have information about a plot to free the king. Tell them you'll only speak to Carver directly. He's paranoid enough to believe it. Vex's eyes were cold. But understand, once they have you, I can't guarantee what happens. If Carver decides you're more useful dead than alive, there's nothing I can do. I know. And strengthening the bond with Leander, then breaking it, there's a real chance it won't work, that you'll both die screaming. I know that too. Rowan uncorked the vial. The liquid inside smelled like copper and nightmares. But I'd rather die trying than waste away alone. She drank it in one swallow. The taste was worse than the smell. It burned going down, and for a second her vision went red. Then it cleared, and she felt the sigil settle into her skin like a brand. It's done, Vex said. Carver's mages will sense you within the hour. Be ready. Rowan nodded and turned toward the door. Miss Vale? She looked back. For what it's worth. Vex's expression was almost human for a moment. I hope you make it, both of you. Someone should get a happy ending out of this mess. Then the moment passed, and he was back to being hollow. Rowan left before she could say something stupid like, thank you, or check. They came for her in an alley 3 blocks from Vex's warehouse. 6 guards, all wearing Carver's colors, surrounding her before she had time to run. Not that she planned to. Rowan Vale. The lead guard grabbed her arm. You're under arrest for conspiracy and treason. Take me to Carver. She kept her voice steady. I have information about a plot to free the deposed king. The guard's eyes narrowed. What plot? The kind I'll only discuss with your lord, directly. He searched her face for lies, found nothing useful, and jerked his head at the others. Bind her hands, we're taking her to the palace. They marched her through streets that had been familiar once, past her abandoned shop, toward the palace gates. People stared. Some she recognized. Neighbors, customers, people she'd treated over the years. Their eyes held pity, fear, disgust. The herbalist who'd tried to seduce a king, the witch who'd used blood magic, the common filth who'd gotten what she deserved. Rowan kept her chin up and didn't look away. The palace felt different now, hostile, like it knew she didn't belong and wanted her gone. The guards hauled her through corridors she'd walked freely just days ago, upstairs, through checkpoints where more of Carver's men watched with flat eyes. They stopped at a door she recognized, the North Tower, where they were keeping Leander. Wait here, the lead guard ordered. He went inside, leaving Rowan with the others. She could feel the bond pulling. Leander was close, just beyond that door. The ache in her chest intensified, like her heart was trying to claw its way toward him. 2 days left. Maybe less. The door opened. Carver stood there, smiling like she'd just made his entire week. Miss Vale, what a pleasant surprise. He gestured. Come in, let's chat. The guard shoved her inside. The room beyond was comfortable enough. Books, a desk, windows with actual light. And standing by those windows, hands clenched into fists, face pale with fury, and something darker. Leander. Their eyes met across the room, and Rowan felt the bond flare. Recognition, need, the desperate pull of 2 people who'd been torn apart and forced back together. Don't, Carver warned, moving between them. You're here to talk, not reunite. Let me... Leander started forward. 3 guards blocked his path, weapons drawn. He stopped, jaw tight enough to crack teeth. Carver turned to Rowan. My guards tell me you have information about a plot to free him. I'm listening. I lied. The words came out flat. There's no plot. I just needed to see him. Carver's smile widened. So you traded your freedom for a conversation. How romantic. How utterly pointless. He gestured at the guards. Take her to the cells. Let her rot there until the bond kills her. Wait. Rowan's voice cut through the room. I'll make you a deal. You have nothing I want. I have cooperation. I'll publicly confess to using blood magic to seduce the king. I'll validate every lie you've told about me. Give you the witch you need to justify everything you've done. She met his eyes. In exchange, you give me 2 hours alone with him. Why would I do that? Because right now, there are still people in this city who question your story, who think maybe the king was telling the truth. Maybe you're the villain. Rowan's hands clenched behind her back. But if I confess, if the witch herself admits to manipulating him, all those questions disappear. You get the narrative you want, clean, uncontested. Carver considered this, and in return you get 2 hours to say goodbye. Yes. That's all? Just conversation? Rowan's chin lifted. That's all. He studied her, looking for the trick, the trap, found nothing he could identify. 1 hour, he said finally. Under guard, they stay in the room. No guards, no witnesses, 1 hour of privacy or no deal. You could try to escape. Where would we go? You have 50 men in this palace. We're unarmed. Leander's already abdicated. She held his gaze. Give us 1 hour. Then I'll give you everything you need to cement your power. Silence stretched. Then Carver laughed. Fine. 1 hour. Say your goodbyes. Make your peace. Then you sign a confession and we're done. He moved toward the door. And Miss Vale? If you try anything stupid, I'll kill him in front of you before you can blink. Understood? Understood. Carver left, taking his guards with him. The door locked from the outside. For a heartbeat, Rowan and Leander just stared at each other. Then he crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, kissing her like a drowning man finding air. She kissed back just as desperately, hands fisting in his shirt, the bond between them singing with relief. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Leander's hands framed her face. You shouldn't have come. It's not safe. I don't care about safe. Rowan cut him off. We have 1 hour, maybe less, and I need to tell you something. What? There's a way to break the bond, but it requires... She took a breath. It requires us to strengthen it first, make it permanent. Then a mage named Vex can sever it without killing us. Leander's eyes searched hers. How do we strengthen it? Complete it, make it real in every sense. Understanding dawned on his face. You're saying we need to... Yes. Heat flooded her cheeks despite everything. I know it's insane. I know we don't have time, but Vex says it's the only way we survive this. And you trust this mage? I don't have a choice. It's him, or we both die within 2 days. Leander's hand slid down to her waist. There are worse ways to spend an hour. Despite everything, Rowan laughed. Slightly hysterical, but genuine. We're about to have sex to save our lives, and you're making jokes. I'm terrified. His voice dropped. Terrified this won't work. Terrified I'll lose you. Terrified that strengthening this bond will just make it hurt worse when it breaks. His forehead pressed against hers. But I'm more terrified of not trying. Then let's try. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. But Leander, if this goes wrong, if we don't survive, we will. But if we don't, her voice cracked. I need you to know it was real. Everything I felt, everything we had. The bond might have brought us together, but what I feel now is mine. It's real. I know. His thumb traced her cheek. Because I feel it too. They came together again, and this time it wasn't desperate or rushed. It was deliberate, a choice made with full knowledge of the consequences. The bond flared between them as they shed barriers, physical and otherwise, as they chose each other in the most fundamental way possible. And somewhere in that hour, in the quiet moments between heartbeats, the bond shifted, deepened, became something that went beyond magic or manipulation, became permanent. When they finally lay tangled together in the narrow bed, the bond humming between them like a live wire, Rowan felt the difference. The connection was stronger now, fuller, like it had found its proper shape. I can feel you, Leander whispered against her hair. Your heartbeat, your breath, everything. I feel you too. Rowan's hand rested over his heart. Is it supposed to be this intense? I don't know, but I don't want it to stop. The door rattled. They had maybe minutes before Carver returned. Rowan sat up, reaching for her discarded clothes. We need to find Vex. Get him here to break this before... Before what? Carver's voice came from the doorway. They both froze. The door stood open. Carver filled the frame, flanked by guards, his expression shifting from triumph to something darker as he took in the scene. Well, his smile was knife-sharp. Isn't this cozy? Leander moved in front of Rowan, shielding her even as she scrambled to dress. You said 1 hour. It's been 90 minutes. You were so occupied you didn't notice. Carver stepped inside. Tell me, did you really think I'd let you have privacy without observation? There are spy holes in every room of this palace. I watched everything. Rowan's stomach dropped. And what I saw was very interesting. The way the air around you both seemed to glow, the way that bond mark on your wrists pulsed. He gestured at Rowan's left wrist, where a faint silver mark had appeared. She hadn't noticed it before. You didn't just say goodbye. You completed the bond. So what? Leander's voice was hard. What does it matter now? It matters because completed blood bonds are rare, valuable. Carver's eyes gleamed. The kind of thing certain collectors would pay fortunes for. Living test subjects bound at the soul level, perfect for experimentation. Horror crawled up Rowan's spine. You're going to sell us? I'm going to sell her, Carver corrected. You, deposed king, are worth nothing. But her? A completed bond that's been consummated and sealed? The mages in the Eastern Territories would empty their treasuries for a specimen like that. No. Leander's hands clenched. You're not touching her. I'm not touching her. I'm shipping her east in 3 days. Carver turned toward the door. Plenty of time for the bond to start causing problems. Should make for interesting observations. Carver! Leander lunged. The guards were ready. They slammed him back against the wall, blades at his throat. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Carver's voice stayed pleasant. You lost. Accept it. He left and the guards dragged Rowan toward the door. She fought, kicked, clawed, screamed, but there were too many of them. They hauled her into the corridor while Leander roared behind her, the sound of him being beaten down echoing through the tower. Then a door slammed and she was alone with Carver's men, being marched toward the dungeons, the bond in her chest screaming with the distance from Leander. They threw her into a cell that made the first one look luxurious. Stone walls slick with moisture. No window. No light except the torch in the corridor. The door clanged shut. Rowan collapsed against the wall, feeling the bond pulse with distress. She could still sense Leander, distant but present, hurt, furious, trapped, just like her. 2 days until Carver shipped her east. 2 days to find a way out of this nightmare. She closed her eyes and reached for the bond, followed it like a thread through the darkness until she found him. Leander. His consciousness brushed against hers, bloodied but unbroken. Can you hear me? She didn't speak out loud, just thought it into the connection. A pause. Then, yes. Are you hurt? No, you? I'll live. His fury came through the bond like heat. I'm going to kill him. Get in line. Rowan pressed her hand against the wall, like she could somehow touch him through stone and distance. We need a plan. Working on it. Vess and Thorn are still loyal. If I can get word to them. How? You're locked in a tower and I'm in a cell. Silence on the other end. Then, the bond. We can use the bond. How? I don't know yet. But we're connected. Permanently. There has to be a way to weaponize that. Rowan felt something shift in her chest. A spark of hope. You're right. Of course I'm right. I'm always right. A beat. Except when I'm not. Which is frequently. Despite everything, she almost laughed. We're going to die, aren't we? Probably. His voice softened through the connection. But not without a fight. The bond pulsed between them, agreement and determination and something fiercer. Rowan settled against the wall, feeling Leander's presence wrapped around her consciousness like armor, and started planning. They had 2 days, time to make them count. The escape came from an unexpected quarter. Rowan was dozing fitfully against the cell wall, the bond aching with distance, when she heard voices in the corridor. Told you, I need to examine her. Lord Carver's orders. That voice, she knew that voice. Vex. The cell door opened and the gaunt mage stepped inside, carrying a bag of supplies. A guard stood behind him, watching. 5 minutes, the guard said. Carver wants a full report on her condition before the transport. 5 minutes. Vex knelt beside Rowan, and his eyes held a message. Play along. Let me see your wrist. She extended her arm, and he examined the silver mark the completed bond had left. Fascinating, he murmured. The bond took root deeper than expected. His fingers traced the mark, and Rowan felt something else. A tingle of magic. words being written on her skin in invisible ink. "Can you read this?" She gave the smallest nod. "Good." Vex's fingers kept moving, writing quickly. "Vess and Thorn are planning a rescue. Tonight. Midnight. Be ready. Tell Leander through bond." Rowan's breath caught. Out loud she said, "What does it mean? The mark?" "It means the bond is permanent now. Unbreakable by conventional means." Vex stood, gathering his supplies. To the guard, he added, "She's stable for transport, though I recommend keeping her and the deposed king separated. The bond causes distress when they're apart. Could lead to complications." "Not my problem," the guard gestured. "You done?" "For now." They left, locking the cell behind them. Rowan waited until the footsteps faded, then reached for the bond. "Leander, can you hear me?" "Always." "What happened?" "Vex was just here. Vess and Thorn are coming. Tonight, midnight." A surge of fierce joy through the connection. "Finally. We need to be ready. They'll only get one chance at this." "I know." His determination came through sharp and clear. "Whatever happens, we fight. Together." "Together," she agreed. The hours crawled past with agonizing slowness. Rowan tried to rest, tried to conserve strength, but her nerves wouldn't let her settle. Through the bond, she could feel Leander doing the same, pacing, planning, waiting. The torch in the corridor burned low, then lower. Then voices echoed through the dungeon, sharp, urgent, the sound of guards being taken down fast and quiet. Rowan stood, pressing herself against the cell door. The lock clicked. The door swung open to reveal Commander Vess, covered in blood that wasn't hers, sword in hand. "Move. We don't have much time." Rowan didn't need to be told twice. She followed Vess through the dungeon, stepping over unconscious guards, moving through corridors thick with tension. "Where's Leander?" she asked. "Thorn's getting him from the north tower. We're meeting at the east gate." Vess didn't slow down. "Carver's tripled the guard since the abdication. We had to take down 30 men just to get this far." "How many do you have?" 20 loyal soldiers, against Carver's 100. Vess's smile was grim. "Good odds." They burst into a courtyard just as another group appeared. Thorn leading a dozen soldiers, and in the middle of them, Leander. Bruised, bloodied, but whole. His eyes found Rowan's across the courtyard, and the bond sang with relief. Then Carver's voice rang out from the palace steps. "Stop right there!" They all turned. Carver stood flanked by 50 soldiers, all armed, all ready. Behind him, more men poured from the palace. Archers on the walls, reinforcements cutting off every exit. They were surrounded. "Vess, Thorn." Carver's voice stayed conversational. "I'm disappointed. I thought you understood the new order." "The only order we understand is loyalty to our king." Vess moved to stand beside Leander. "And that's him." He abdicated, under duress, which makes it invalid. Carver's smile was cold. "Invalid or not, he no longer has the power to protect any of you. Lay down your weapons, and I'll make your deaths quick. Resist, and I'll make them last days." "We've faced worse odds," Thorn said. "Not like this, you haven't." Carver gestured, and the archers drew. 50 arrows aimed at 20 soldiers and 2 people bound by magic they barely understood. This was it. The moment everything came down to blood and choice. Rowan felt Leander's hand find hers, their fingers lacing together, the bond flaring between them. Through the connection, she felt his thought. If we're going to die, we die fighting. She squeezed his hand, together. Then the world exploded into chaos as Vess gave the order to charge, and Carver's archers released their volley and the courtyard became a war zone, with Rowan and Leander at the center. The bond between them burning like a star as they fought for the slim chance that they might actually survive. The arrows fell like rain. Rowan hit the ground as the first volley screamed overhead, Leander's body covering hers, the bond between them flaring so bright she could feel it in her teeth. Steel rang against steel. Men screamed. Blood sprayed across ancient cobblestones that had witnessed 1,000 years of violence and would witness 1,000 more. "Move!" Vess hauled them both up, shield raised against the second volley. "Get to cover!" They ran, 22 people against 100, toward the only structure that offered protection. An old stable, half collapsed, its roof sagging like a broken promise. Thorn's soldiers formed a wall at their backs, shields locked, holding the line while arrows hammered down like the fury of every wrong choice Carver had ever made coming home to roost. Inside the stable, Rowan pressed against rotting wood and tried to breathe through the terror. Leander's hand stayed locked in hers, the bond singing with adrenaline and desperate determination. "We can't hold this position," Thorn said, breathing hard. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye. "There are too many. Then we break through." Leander's voice came out hard, cold, the king returning even without a crown. "Vess, how many men on the east wall?" 10, maybe 12. "We go over them, fast and brutal, no mercy." "Sir, even if we make it over the wall, Carver will hunt us." "Let him hunt." Leander's eyes were ice. "Right now I just need us alive long enough to regroup." Another volley struck the stable. Wood splintered. Someone screamed as an arrow found flesh. They were out of time. "On my mark," Leander said. "We charge the east wall. Vess leads. Thorn takes rear guard. Everyone else between." His eyes found Rowan's. "Stay close to me. Don't let go of my hand." "I won't." "Promise me." "I promise." He kissed her, brief and fierce, then turned to face the carnage outside. Now. They exploded from the stable like a force of nature, 22 against 100, moving as one, shields locked, weapons swinging. The bond between Rowan and Leander pulled taut as they ran, her hand fused to his, their hearts beating in sync. Carver's men rushed to meet them. The impact was bone-breaking. Vess took the first 3 down with brutal efficiency, her blade singing through flesh and armor like it was made for nothing else. Thorn covered the rear, roaring orders, keeping their formation tight even as men fell around them. Rowan stumbled over a body, and Leander caught her, kept her upright, kept them moving. Arrows continued to fall, but the archers couldn't get clean shots without hitting their own men. The courtyard became a churning mass of violence and desperation, screams and steel, and the wet sound of blades finding homes in human flesh. They fought their way forward, 5 yards, 10, 15, toward the east wall where 12 guards stood ready. "Through them!" Leander's voice cut over the chaos. Vess hit the line first, a whirlwind of controlled violence. 2 guards went down before they knew what happened. Thorn came in from the side, shield smashing faces, sword following through. The line broke. They were through. Leander hauled Rowan toward the wall, toward the narrow stairs leading up and over. Behind them, Carver's remaining forces regrouped, preparing to pursue. Then a voice rang out across the courtyard. "Enough!" Everyone froze. Carver stood on the palace steps, and in his hands, a crossbow, aimed at Rowan. "One more step, and I put a bolt through her heart." Leander stopped moving. His hand tightened on Rowan's, the bond screaming warning. "Let her go," Carver called out. "All of you. Drop your weapons and let her go. She's the only one I want." "No deal." Leander's voice was granite. "Then I kill her right now, and you watch." The crossbow didn't waver. Rowan felt Leander's calculation through the bond. Distance, angle, probability. Carver was too far away, too well protected. Even if they ran, even if they tried to dodge, the bolt would find her before they cleared the courtyard. They were trapped. "What do you want?" Leander asked. "I told you. Her. The completed blood bond is worth more than this entire kingdom." Carver's smile was sharp. "Give her to me and the rest of you can walk away. I'll even let you keep your lives, start over somewhere else. And her? Goes east, becomes very valuable property, lives a long life being studied by mages who will pay fortunes for access to that bond. That's not a life. It's more than she deserves." Carver's finger tensed on the trigger. "Last chance. Her for everyone else. Choose." Silence stretched. Rowan felt Leander's anguish through the bond, felt him being torn apart by an impossible choice. She made it for him. "Take me." "Rowan, no!" She pulled her hand free from his, breaking contact, and the bond shrieked. "It's okay." "It's not okay. I'm not trading you." "You don't have a choice." She turned to face him, and her eyes were steady, despite the terror crawling up her spine. "I told you before. I'm not worth a war. I'm not worth all these lives. You're worth everything." "Then prove it." Her hand came up to touch his face. "Let me save you this time." Something broke in his expression. "I can't." Yes, you can. She kissed him, soft and final. I love you, and that's why I'm walking away. She turned before he could stop her and started across the courtyard toward Carver. Each step felt like dying. The bond stretched between them, protesting, pulling, trying to drag her back. She kept walking. Behind her, Leander made a sound like something fundamental was being ripped out of his chest. Rowan didn't look back. She made it halfway across the courtyard when Vex appeared. The mage stepped from the shadows near the palace wall, hands already glowing with power, and his voice rang out clear and sharp. Lord Carver, I believe we had an agreement. Carver's crossbow swung toward him. What are you doing here? Ending our arrangement. Vex's hands moved and the air around him began to shimmer. You cured my cancer, gave me years I wouldn't have had otherwise, and in exchange I gave you 5 years of service, blood bonds, curses, every dark spell you needed to claw your way to power. And you'll give me 5 more? No. The word came out flat. I won't, because Miss Vale offered me something you never did. Freedom, real freedom, not servitude dressed up as salvation. She can't offer you anything. She has no power. She has a king who loves her, and 20 loyal soldiers willing to die for him. Vex's smile was terrible. That's more power than you've ever had, my lord, because power built on fear dies the moment people stop being afraid. He moved his hands in a complex pattern, and the silver marks on Rowan's wrists began to glow. She gasped as magic flooded through her, not painful, but overwhelming. The bond flared, and through it she felt Leander stagger as the same magic hit him. What are you doing? Carver demanded. Breaking the bond. Vex's voice stayed calm, clinical. Properly this time. The way it should have been done from the start. That will kill them both. It would have, if they hadn't completed it first. Vex's eyes met Rowan's across the courtyard. Remember what I told you, the bond needs to be strong enough to absorb the shock. Strong enough that when it breaks, there's enough excess power to keep you both alive. How strong is strong enough? Rowan managed through gritted teeth. Strong enough that you'd die for each other. Strong enough that you'd choose the other's life over your own. His smile softened just slightly. I'd say you've met the criteria. The magic intensified. Rowan felt the bond begin to fracture, not shattering, but carefully, precisely separating, like a surgeon cutting away diseased tissue, leaving healthy flesh behind. It hurt, not physically. Worse. Like every moment she'd shared with Leander, every touch and conversation and desperate kiss was being pulled from her chest one memory at a time. She fell to her knees. Across the courtyard, Leander did the same. The bond stretched between them, visible now, a silver thread connecting their hearts, pulsing with light and power, and everything they'd become to each other. Then Vex spoke a word in a language Rowan didn't recognize. The thread snapped. The world exploded into white light and screaming silence, and the sensation of falling through space with nothing to catch her. Rowan hit the cobblestones, and everything went dark. Bapaksam. She woke to the smell of smoke and copper. Her chest ached like someone had carved out her ribs and left the cavity empty. Every breath hurt. Every heartbeat felt wrong. The bond was gone. She could feel its absence like a missing limb, present in the phantom pain, the echo of what had been there. Rowan forced her eyes open. The courtyard was chaos. Vex lay crumpled near the palace wall, unconscious or dead, the effort of breaking the bond having taken everything he had. Carver's crossbow was on the ground, the man himself backed against the palace steps, surrounded by Vess and her remaining soldiers. And Leander, he knelt 10 feet away, staring at his hands like he didn't recognize them, his face pale as death. Their eyes met. For a second there was nothing, no pull, no psychic connection, just two people looking at each other across a gap that suddenly felt impossibly wide. Then recognition flared in Leander's eyes, and he was moving, crossing the distance between them, pulling Rowan into his arms. Are you? His voice broke. Tell me you're alive. Tell me that worked. I'm alive. She pressed her face against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, solid and real and separate from hers. The bond is gone. I can't feel you anymore. I know. They held each other while around them, Carver's coup fell apart. His soldiers, seeing their lord surrounded and the deposed king very much alive, began to lower their weapons. Some fled. Others surrendered. Within minutes, the battle was over. Carver stood alone, backed against stone, all his careful plans reduced to rubble. Leander stood, pulling Rowan up with him. His hand stayed locked in hers, not because a bond forced them together, but because he chose to hold on. They crossed the courtyard to where Vess held Carver at sword point. "Your Majesty," the commander's voice was careful. "What are your orders?" Leander stared at the man who'd orchestrated everything. The blood bond, the coup, the attempted sale of Rowan to Eastern mages. His expression was unreadable. "Why?" he asked finally. "You had power, influence, respect. Why risk it all for a crown you were never meant to wear?" Carver's smile was bitter. "Because men like you are born into power and never appreciate it, never use it properly. You spend 14 months barely functional, making decisions while half mad, and the kingdom suffers. Then a common girl walks in and suddenly you're human again." His voice turned sharp. "That's not leadership. That's weakness. And I knew I could do better." "Better?" Leander's voice was soft, dangerous. "You call manipulating people with blood magic better? Turning human beings into commodities better? I call it pragmatic. You call it power." Rowan spoke for the first time. "But real power isn't control. It's not manipulation or fear or forcing people to need you. Real power is inspiring loyalty so deep people will die for you. And you never understood that." Carver's eyes found hers. "And what would a nobody from the slums know about power?" "More than you." She stepped closer. "Because I learned it from watching Leander, from seeing how Vess and Thorn follow him, not because they have to, but because they want to. Because he's worth following, worth dying for." Her voice dropped. "You spent 5 years controlling Vex with threats and leverage. I offered him freedom and he gave me everything. That's the difference between us. Pretty words, but in the end, I nearly won." "Nearly doesn't matter." Leander's hand tightened on Rowan's. "You lost. And now you face trial for treason." "Trial?" Carver laughed. "You mean execution? Let's not pretend otherwise." "I mean trial. With evidence, with witnesses, with the law applied fairly." Leander's voice stayed level. "Because that's what separates a king from a tyrant, and I'm not becoming you to defeat you." Something flickered in Carver's expression. Surprise. Maybe respect. Then it was gone, replaced by resignation. "So be it. Try me. Execute me. It doesn't change the fundamental truth." "Which is?" "That you were broken. That it took a common herbalist and blood magic to make you functional again." Carver's smile was sharp. "And now that the bond is gone, now that you can't feel her anymore, how long before you break again?" The question hung in the air. Leander looked at Rowan and she saw the fear in his eyes. The same question echoing in his mind. What if Carver was right? What if without the bond, the nightmares came back? What if he fell apart again? She squeezed his hand. "You won't." "How do you know?" "Because the bond didn't fix you. It gave you permission to rest. But the real work, facing Blackwater, accepting what happened, learning to carry the guilt without letting it destroy you, that was all you." She stepped closer. "I was just there to hold your hand while you did it. You were more than that." "Maybe. But the strength, the courage to keep fighting, that was yours. And it still is." Leander stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to Vess. "Take him to the cells, under guard. Trial in 3 days." "Yes, Your Majesty." They dragged Carver away, and Leander stood in the courtyard, surrounded by the wreckage of the coup, his hand still locked in Rowan's. "I should check on Vex," she said quietly. "See if he survived the breaking." "I'll come with you." They crossed to where the mage lay against the palace wall. Rowan knelt, checking for a pulse. Weak but present. "He's alive." Relief flooded through her. Unconscious, but alive. "Good." Leander gestured at 2 soldiers. "Get him to the healers. Whatever he needs, he gets. He saved our lives." They carried Vex away, and Rowan stood, swaying slightly. The adrenaline was fading, leaving exhaustion and pain in its wake. Her body felt like one giant bruise. Her chest ached where the bond had been. Leander caught her. "You need rest." "So do you. Then we rest together." He helped her toward the palace. "My chambers or yours?" Despite everything, Rowan almost laughed. You're still a king. I'm still nobody. You're not nobody. You never were. He stopped, turned her to face him. And I want to make that official. Leander. I know. No more rushed proposals. No more declarations made under duress. His hands framed her face. But when this is over, when the trial is done, and the kingdom is stable, and we've both had time to breathe, I'm asking again, properly, without blood magic or coups or anything else forcing the issue. And if I say no, then I'll ask again tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. His smile was soft. Until you say yes or kill me for being annoying, whichever comes first. That's not very kingly behavior. Good thing I was never very good at being kingly. This time Rowan did laugh. Exhausted and slightly hysterical, but genuine. They made it to Leander's chambers and collapsed onto the bed. Not for intimacy, just for the simple comfort of not being alone. And for the first time in days, they slept. The trial took 2 weeks to organize. Evidence had to be gathered, witnesses prepared. The full scope of Carver's conspiracy laid bare for the court to see. Vex recovered slowly, testifying from a chair in the throne room about every dark spell he'd been forced to cast. The blood bond, the tracking sigils, the curses laid on Carver's political enemies. Wraith's confession, written before he died, was entered into evidence. Soldiers who'd witnessed the coup testified. Even some of Carver's own men, offered immunity in exchange for honesty, told the truth about their orders. By the time the prosecution rested, there was no question of guilt. Carver stood in chains before the assembled court and listened to the verdict without expression. Guilty on all counts, death by hanging, to be carried out at dawn. Leander, reinstated as king after the council voted unanimously to invalidate his forced abdication, signed the execution order with a steady hand. That night, he visited Carver in his cell. Rowan went with him. Not because she needed to, but because Leander asked, and she'd learned that sometimes the hardest things required witnesses. Carver looked up as they entered, his expression unreadable. "Come to gloat?" he asked. "No." Leander settled onto the bench across from the cell. "I came to understand Understand what? Why you thought this was worth it? Why you risked everything for power you couldn't keep?" Carver was silent for a long moment, then, "Because I watched my father grovel for scraps his entire life. Watched him bow to lesser men because they had the right bloodlines, and he didn't, and I swore I'd never be that powerless." "So, you became the thing you hated?" "No. I became the thing I needed to be to survive." Carver's eyes were hard. "You wouldn't understand. You were born with everything, born into a role that gave you authority and respect and the certainty that you mattered. I had to claw my way up from nothing." "Rowan came from nothing," Leander said quietly. "And she didn't need to manipulate or destroy people to matter. Rowan had you. She had a bond that made her indispensable. That's not nothing." "The bond didn't make her matter. Her choices did." Leander leaned forward. "Every step of this, she could have walked away, could have taken your gold and disappeared, could have let me sacrifice myself to save her. But she didn't. She chose to fight, and that's why she matters." "Pretty sentiment. Doesn't change the fact that I nearly won." "Nearly." Leander stood. "I came here hoping to find something redeemable, some reason to show you mercy. But all I see is a man who'd rather burn the world than admit he was wrong. Then I guess we understand each other after all." Carver's smile was cold. "You're not so different from me, boy. You just had better luck." Leander stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and left without another word. Rowan followed. In the corridor outside, Leander stopped, hands braced against the wall, breathing hard. "He's wrong," Rowan said softly. "You're nothing like him." "Aren't I? I was ready to sacrifice the kingdom for you, ready to let it burn if it meant keeping you safe." "That's not the same as what he did." "Isn't it?" He turned to face her. "We were both willing to destroy everything for what we wanted." "No." Rowan moved closer. "You wanted power. You wanted to protect someone you loved. The motivation matters." "Does it?" "Yes." She took his hands. "Because when you had to choose, when Carver gave you the option to trade me for everyone else's safety, you didn't. You found another way. You fought until there was a solution that didn't require sacrificing anyone. We got lucky. Maybe. But you tried. That's what separates you from him. You tried to find a better way instead of just accepting that someone had to lose. Leander pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. I don't know how to do this without you. You won't have to. I'm not going anywhere. Even without the bond? Especially without the bond. She pulled back to meet his eyes. Because now when I choose to stay, it's not magic. It's not fate. It's just me choosing you. Every day. For as long as you'll have me. Something in his expression shifted, settled. Then marry me. Rowan's breath caught. What? Not a proposal made under duress, not a desperate gambit to protect you from the court. Just, he took her hands. Marry me because you want to. Because I love you, and you love me, and that's enough. The court will still object. Let them. I'll make you queen and they can accept it or find a new king. You're not supposed to risk the kingdom for me anymore. Remember? We just talked about this. I'm not risking the kingdom. I'm asking the woman I love to marry me. His smile was soft. There's a difference. Rowan looked at him, this king who'd been broken and put himself back together, who'd faced down his own nightmares and come out stronger, who looked at her like she was worth more than crowns, and felt her heart make the choice her mind had known for weeks. Yes, the word came out steady. Sure. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you, for real this time. No magic, no coups, no ulterior motives. She smiled. Just two people who somehow found each other in the middle of a nightmare and decided to hold on. Leander kissed her, and it felt different without the bond. Less all-consuming, more human, real. When they broke apart, he was smiling. We should probably tell Vess before she finds out from palace gossip. She's going to hate this. She already hates this. Now she'll just have to accept it. They walked through the palace hand in hand, and Rowan felt the absence of the bond like a healed scar, present but not painful. A reminder of what had been, but not a chain holding her in place. She was free. They both were. And they were choosing each other anyway. Hassan. The execution took place at dawn. Rowan stood beside Leander on the palace steps, watching as Carver was led to the gallows. The crowd was massive. Nobles, commoners, soldiers, all gathered to witness justice delivered. Carver climbed the steps without hesitation, faced the crowd without fear. Any last words? The executioner asked. Carver's eyes found Leander's across the square. I regret nothing, except that I failed. The executioner placed the noose. Rowan looked away. The trap dropped. It was over in seconds. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some silent, some crying for reasons Rowan couldn't begin to guess. Leander's hand found hers, and she held on tight. It's done, he said quietly. Yes. Do you think we did the right thing? Rowan considered the question. Considered the man who'd orchestrated blood bonds and coups and would have sold her to Eastern mages without hesitation. The man who'd shown no remorse, no recognition that his actions had hurt anyone but himself. I think we did the just thing, she said finally. Whether it was right, that's for history to decide. Leander nodded slowly. Then let's give history something worth recording. They turned away from the gallows and walked back into the palace, ready to rebuild what Carver's ambition had nearly destroyed. Tiak. The wedding took place 3 months later. Not rushed, not desperate, just a quiet ceremony in the palace chapel with Vess and Thorn as witnesses and Vex standing in the corner looking uncomfortable in clean clothes. Rowan wore a simple dress, not common cloth but not royal finery either, something in between. A reflection of what she was becoming. Leander wore his crown and looked at her like she was the only person in the world who mattered. The ceremony was short. The vows were traditional. The kiss was witnessed by exactly 4 people who'd fought beside them through blood and nightmares and political coups. When it was done, Vess actually smiled. Congratulations, Your Majesties. The title felt strange on Rowan's shoulders. Foreign. Like a coat that didn't quite fit. But Leander's hand in hers felt right. And that was enough. They held a feast that night, not just for nobles, but for everyone. Commoners and soldiers and healers and merchants. Anyone who wanted to come was welcome. Rowan watched from the high table as people filled the great hall, watched them eat and drink and celebrate not a marriage, but the fact that the kingdom had survived, that they'd all survived. "You're thinking too loud," Leander said beside her. "Just wondering if this is real." She turned to look at him. "If we're really here, really safe, really married?" "That too." He smiled. "It's real, I promise." "How do you know?" "Because I can't feel you in my head anymore. Can't sense your emotions or read your thoughts. This," he took her hand, "this is just us. No magic, no bond, just two people who chose each other. Do you miss it, the connection?" Leander was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes, late at night when the palace is dark and I wake up from nightmares of Blackwater, I miss being able to reach for you psychically, being able to know you're there without having to look." "Do the nightmares still come?" "Not as often, and when they do, they're just dreams, not prisons." He squeezed her hand. "You were right about that. The bond didn't fix me. It gave me space to fix myself. And now," his eyes met hers, "now I can face Blackwater without drowning in it. I can carry the guilt without letting it destroy me. Because you learned how. Because you taught me how." Rowan shook her head. "I didn't teach you anything. I just held your hand while you figured it out. Sometimes that's all anyone needs. Someone to hold their hand while they figure out how to keep breathing." They sat in comfortable silence while around them the celebration continued, music and laughter and the sound of a kingdom healing. Vex appeared at their table, looking distinctly uncomfortable in formal attire. "Your Majesties," he bowed awkwardly. "I wanted to, that is, I came to—" He stopped, frustrated. "Spit it out," Leander said, not unkindly. "Thank you." The words came out fast. "For keeping your promise. For giving me sanctuary and a new name and a life that doesn't involve being someone's magical slave." "You saved our lives," Rowan said. "It was the least we could do. It was more than anyone else ever offered." Vex's hands twisted together. "I spent 5 years doing terrible things because I was too scared to refuse, too afraid of dying to care who I hurt. But you," he looked at Rowan, "you offered me freedom knowing I might betray you, knowing I might tell Carver everything. But you didn't." "No, I didn't, because for the first time in 5 years, someone treated me like I was worth saving." His voice went rough. "So thank you for seeing something in me I'd stopped seeing in myself." "You're welcome," Leander said quietly. "And Vex, what you did for Carver, that doesn't define you. What you do with this second chance, that's what matters now." The mage nodded, eyes suspiciously bright, and melted back into the crowd. Rowan watched him go and felt something settle in her chest. They'd survived, all of them, broken and scarred and changed by what they'd been through, but alive, and that was worth celebrating. That night, alone in the royal chambers, Leander pulled Rowan close and kissed her like they had all the time in the world. Because they did. No countdown, no bond threatening to kill them if they stayed apart. Just two people who'd chosen each other and meant it. "Tell me something," Leander said against her hair. "Do you ever regret it? Any of it? The bond, the coup, the trial? If you could go back and change it." "I wouldn't." Rowan's answer came without hesitation. "Because all of that, the nightmares and the blood magic and the near-death experiences that brought us here. And here is exactly where I want to be. Even knowing how close we came to losing, especially knowing that." She pulled back to meet his eyes. "We could have died a dozen times over, but we didn't. We fought, and we survived, and we chose each other at every step. That means something. It means everything." He kissed her again, slower this time. "I love you. Not because magic made me. Not because circumstances forced us together. Just because you're you, and that's enough." "It's more than enough," Rowan smiled against his mouth. "It's everything." They fell into bed together, and this time there was no desperation, no fear of separation or magical bonds breaking. Just two people loving each other in the quiet darkness, choosing connection over isolation, choosing trust over fear, choosing each other, again and again and again. And in the morning, when dawn light filtered through the windows and Rowan woke wrapped in Leander's arms, she felt the absence of the bond like a gift. Because this quiet morning, this gentle awakening, this simple choice to stay, wasn't magic. It was real. And real was so much better than any spell could ever be sung. Ishikam. 5 years later, Rowan stood in the palace gardens watching her daughter chase butterflies through the rose bushes. The girl had Leander's gray eyes and Rowan's stubborn chin. She was 3 years old and absolutely fearless, charging through the world like it owed her explanations. "She's going to be trouble," Vess said from beside her. The commander had retired from active duty 2 years ago, but still visited regularly. Just like her mother. "I wasn't trouble. I was practical. You married a king and started a near civil war. That's not practical. That's chaos." Rowan laughed. "Fair point." They watched the girl run, her nurse following at a safe distance, ready to catch her if she fell. "Do you ever think about it?" Vess asked quietly. "The bond? What it felt like?" "Sometimes." Rowan's hand went to her wrist, where the silver mark had faded to a barely visible scar. "Late at night when I can't sleep, I remember what it was like to feel Leander's heartbeat in my chest, to know exactly what he was feeling without having to ask. Do you miss it? No. The answer came easy. True. Because what we have now is better. It requires work, communication, actual effort to understand each other instead of just psychic connection." She smiled. "It's harder, but it's real." "And the nightmares? Does he still?" "Sometimes. Blackwater will always be part of him, but he's learned to carry it without letting it crush him." Rowan's eyes found Leander across the garden, playing with their daughter. "He's learned that grief and guilt can coexist with joy, that you can remember the dead without becoming one of them." Bess nodded slowly. "He's a good king. He's a good man. The king part just comes with the territory." The commander smiled. "You're good for him, both of you." "We're good for each other," Rowan corrected. "That's how this works." They stood in comfortable silence, watching Leander scoop up his daughter and spin her around, her delighted squeals echoing through the garden. This was what they'd fought for. Not power, not crowns, not even love, exactly. This, the quiet moments, the ordinary days. The simple choice to keep choosing each other even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. Rowan's daughter spotted her and ran over, arms outstretched. "Mama, Papa says we can feed the ducks." "Does he now?" Rowan scooped her up. "And did Papa ask Mama if she had time to feed ducks?" Leander appeared slightly out of breath, crown sitting crooked on his head. "Papa is asking now, very nicely, with the full authority of the crown. The crown doesn't get you out of asking permission. What if I said please?" "That might work." He kissed her, quick and sweet, and their daughter made a disgusted sound. "You're always kissing," she complained. "That's because we like each other," Leander said seriously. "One day you'll understand." "Never. Kissing is gross," said every 3-year-old ever, Bess muttered. They walked to the duck pond together, Leander carrying their daughter, Rowan's hand in his, Vess trailing behind like the protective aunt she'd become. And as Rowan watched her family feed stale bread to overfed ducks, she thought about the girl she'd been 5 years ago. The nobody herbalist from the lower districts who'd stumbled into a king's nightmares and somehow found her way home. She thought about blood bonds and coups and the desperate choices people make when they're running out of time. She thought about Carver, dead 5 years now, his name already fading from history books. She thought about Vex, living quietly in the Southern Territories under a new name, finally free. She thought about all the ways this could have gone wrong, all the moments where one different choice would have led to tragedy instead of triumph. And she was grateful. Not for the suffering, not for the near-death experiences or the political machinations or any of it, but for what came after. For learning that love wasn't magic, it was choice. And choosing each other day after day, year after year, in big moments and small, that was the real magic, the kind that lasted, the kind that mattered, the kind that turned a nobody herbalist and a broken king into something neither of them could have been alone. A family. Rowan smiled and squeezed Leander's hand, and he squeezed back without looking, the gesture so natural now it didn't require thought. No bond to tell them what the other was feeling, no magic to force them together. Just two people who'd chosen each other in the dark and kept choosing each other in the light. And that was enough. That was everything. That was home.